Chapter 58. Ji Tianqing had been guarding his father's room from noon to the next morning, and he hadn't left. When the first ray of sunlight shone through the window and into the room, Ji Changkong finally woke up. Ji Tianqing immediately let out a sigh of relief and said with concern, "Father, you're finally awake. How do you feel?" Ji Changkong weakly opened his eyes and looked around with hazy eyes before his gaze landed on Ji Tianqing. "Tianqing. Don't worry, father can still hold on. These injuries and setbacks are far inferior to the battle 10 years ago. How can it be a problem for me?" Ji Tianqing silently nodded, but his heart was a little sour. His once high-spirited, majestic, and domineering father was now pale and weak as he lay on the bed. Yet, he still had to endure his injuries and comfort him. Ji Changkong tilted his head to look at him and asked in a weak voice, "Tianqing, father might have to go into seclusion to heal for a few months. Even if I recover in the future, I'm afraid that my strength will fall greatly. Although father has been waiting for you to grow up and pass on the position of patriarch to you, father can't wait any longer. But I can't wait any longer, so I can only give you this important task in advance. Father knows that the Ji family is in a difficult situation right now. This burden is too heavy. However, father believes that you will definitely overcome this crisis and protect the Ji family's 100 years of foundation." Ji Tianqing naturally knew the Ji family's predicament and also felt the heavy pressure. However, at this point, he could only grit his teeth and bear this heavy responsibility. "Father, don't worry. No matter how difficult it is, I will endure it and won't let you down. In a moment, I will arrange for you to enter a secret room. You can focus on healing your injuries." Ji Changkong nodded slightly and squeezed out a smile on his pale face. "Tianqing, the Shadow Sword Hall only listens to the Patriarch's orders. You can trust them. Apart from that, you have to be careful of the others. With the Ji family's internal strife, many people might become disloyal. No matter what, you have to remember that your own safety is the most important thing. Only by surviving will there be hope." "Father, I will remember." Ji Tianqing nodded solemnly. Then, he arranged for 2 guards who were absolutely loyal to his father to send his father to the secret underground room so that his father could recuperate peacefully. Ji Tianqing had just finished dealing with this matter when a guard outside the door respectfully reported, "Eldest young master, second elder has summoned you to the main hall to discuss important matters with the elders and deacons." Hearing this news, Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Humph. Second uncle is so anxious to gather everyone for a meeting. It must be because of the family head command tablet. Could it be that he is already impatient?" He coldly snorted in his heart. He straightened his clothes and left his father's residence, rushing to the main hall of the Ji mansion. When he arrived at the Ji mansion's main hall, he saw a group of Ji clan's disciples gathered at the entrance, whispering to each other. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had arrived, the group of Ji clan disciples quickly shut their mouths and pretended to look around. Ji Tianqing ignored the youths of the same generation and calmly stepped into the main hall. There were already 12 people sitting in the main hall. Apart from 2 old men, the other 10 were middle-aged men with dignified auras. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to these 12 people. 3 of them were Ji Tianqing's eldest uncle, second uncle, and third uncle. The other 9 were the Ji clan's managers, each in charge of a province's workshop business. They could be said to be the Ji clan's 9 pillars. Sitting at the head of the table on the left was a stout middle-aged man with a fat head and big ears. His name was Ji Dajiang, Ji Changkong's eldest brother and Ji Tianqing's eldest uncle. However, Ji Dajiang was the most cowardly and incompetent among the 4 brothers of the Ji clan. He had no business acumen or talent for forging. He was best at eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, and enjoying life. In the past, his father treated this eldest uncle well and gave him enough money every month to support him. Therefore, he did not participate in the Ji clan's internal strife and maintained a neutral attitude. Sitting next to Ji Dajiang was second uncle, Ji Rufeng. He wore a purple robe and had a dignified aura. His eyes contained an ominous glint. As for the third seat on the left, there was a skinny middle-aged man with a dark face. He was Ji Tianqing's third uncle. Third uncle was called Ji Changhe. He was a man who took advantage of the situation and was adept at currying favor. Although Ji Changhe was not as ambitious as second uncle Ji Rufeng, he was still a restless fellow. He had secretly engaged in many petty schemes and was in cahoots with Ji Rufeng. In recent years, he had frequently disobeyed his father's orders. The four brothers of the Ji clan had different talents and dispositions, but in terms of martial arts and business talent, the fourth brother, Ji Changkong, was undoubtedly more outstanding. Therefore, Ji Changkong succeeded to the position of clan head 15 years ago. Apart from the three elders, Ji Tianqing did not have a deep understanding of the 9 managers. He only knew that among the 9 managers, 5 of them were from the Ji clan's branch families and 4 were outsiders. The 5 collateral descendants of the Ji family seemed to be closer to Ji Rufeng. On the other hand, the 4 outsiders had always been loyal to Ji Changkong. At this moment, everyone turned to look at Ji Tianqing when they saw him walk into the hall. Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the manager's eyes were clearly scrutinizing and harboring ill intentions. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly walked through the hall and headed straight for the clan head seat. Now that he held the clan head medallion and temporarily replaced his father as clan head, it was only right for him to sit in that seat. However, just as he walked to the clan head seat and was about to sit down, Ji Changhe suddenly spoke. "Tianqing. Everyone present is your elder. It's fine if you don't pay your respects, but you actually want to sit in the main seat. It's not that third uncle is lecturing you, but aren't you a bit too arrogant?" Ji Changhe looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile as if he was a senior lecturing a junior. Ji Tianqing frowned and said expressionlessly, "Father handed the clan head medallion to me. Now that I'm the clan head, what's wrong with sitting in the main seat?" As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Rufeng sneered and retorted, "The Ji clan does not belong to Ji Changkong alone. He privately handed the clan head medallion to you. Did he get the approval of the elders and managers? Moreover, our Ji clan's power is monstrous. Our businesses are spread across half of the imperial Qing dynasty. For such a large clan, only a strong person with both ability and integrity is qualified to be the clan head. You're just a young boy in his teens. How can we let you control the Ji clan? Isn't this child's play? If something goes wrong and affects the Ji clan's foundation and safety, can you bear the responsibility?" Ji Rufeng did not try to hide anything. It was obvious that he did not recognize Ji Tianqing as the acting clan head. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with hatred. With a cold expression, he asked Ji Rufeng, "Second uncle, what do you mean? Don't tell me you want to seize the clan head medallion and control the Ji clan's power?" Ji Rufeng glanced at him and said with a smile, "I've discussed with the elders and managers. We all feel that you are not qualified to be the clan head. So, you have to hand over the clan head medallion today. I will temporarily keep it for you." Chapter 59. You're keeping it for me? Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows as rage and hatred surged in his heart. Second uncle's reason is really dignified. Doesn't he want to seize the opportunity to seize power and become the patriarch? Second uncle used to be secretive. I didn't expect him to be so brazen after father went into seclusion to heal. His ambitions are as clear as day. He stared coldly at Ji Rufeng and asked in a low voice, "Whether I have the right to be the patriarch is not up to you. This is only your side of the story. Besides, what right do you have to keep the patriarch token?" Ji Rufeng's face turned ashen, and his eyes burned with anger. Ji Changhe hurriedly added, "Ji Tianqing, don't be so presumptuous. Before you came, we already discussed this matter with the other managers. This is everyone's common opinion and decision." As soon as he finished speaking, the other managers hurriedly refuted. "Third elder, what do you mean? I didn't agree with your point of view." "That's right. We did discuss this matter before, but we don't agree with second elder's way of doing things. We clearly disagreed. How did it become our common opinion and decision in third elder's mouth? Heh, is third elder going to ignore us old fellows?" Ji Tianqing felt a little comforted when he saw the managers helping him out of his predicament. His expression eased a lot. Second uncle Ji Rufeng secretly clenched his fists. He glanced at the managers and continued, "Since there are people who disagree, this matter will be handled according to the Ji family's rules." He turned to Ji Tianqing and said in a low voice, "According to the Ji family's rules, the successor to the position of patriarch must enter the family's forbidden area and undergo a test." "Ji Tianqing, you want to be the patriarch, don't you? Then you must enter the family's forbidden area and obtain the azure crystal. Only then will you have the right to succeed as patriarch." After hearing Ji Rufeng's words, third elder Ji Changhe and the other Ji managers all revealed playful smiles. The four managers' expressions changed abruptly, and they hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Tianqing, don't listen to the second elder. You can't enter the clan's forbidden area now. The clan's forbidden grounds are filled with unfathomable dangers. With your strength, you must not enter. Otherwise, it's extremely likely that you'll lose your life." Second elder, you know that Tianqing is young and only at the true element realm, yet you still forced him to enter the Ji clan's forbidden area. What are your intentions? Second elder, we strongly disagree with your opinion. Ji Tianqing had also heard about the family's forbidden area from his father, so he had heard about the dangers within. According to his father, there was an extremely ferocious demonic beast residing in the family's forbidden area. If one did not have the strength of a Tongxian realm cultivator, entering the Ji clan's forbidden grounds would only result in death. When Ji Rufeng saw Ji Tianqing's gloomy expression, he immediately revealed a complacent sneer. "Ji Tianqing, these are the rules of the Ji family. You must obey them. Now, you only have two choices. Either enter the clan's forbidden area and accept the test, or obediently hand over the family head token and let me keep it for you. As your second uncle, I must remind you that when your father entered the clan's forbidden area in order to obtain the azure crystal, he escaped covered in cuts and bruises and almost lost his life. With your current strength, entering the forbidden area is certain death. Therefore, I suggest that you hand over the family head token. Don't worry, I'm only temporarily keeping it for you. When your father recovers from his injuries, I'll naturally return it to him." Ha 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 ha. The four elders immediately stood up in agitation and angrily rebuked Ji Rufeng. "Second elder, you're truly a wolf with wild ambitions. Humph. You want to seize the family head's position while he's injured and in seclusion? Do you think that we don't know your scheme? No matter what, we won't let Tianqing enter the forbidden area." Ji Rufeng's eyes surged with a cold light as he glared at the four of them. He sternly shouted, "This is our Ji family's internal affairs. Who are you to tell us what to do?" The four elders were immediately embarrassed. They were so angry that their faces turned ashen as they powerlessly sat down. "Humph." Ji Rufeng coldly snorted before withdrawing his gaze and looking gloomily at Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, don't waste time. Quickly make your choice. Enter the clan's forbidden area or hand over the family head token." Ji Tianqing secretly clenched his fists as his heart surged with rage. Second uncle Ji Rufeng's unbridled and overbearing manner caused a trace of murderous intent to quietly emerge in his heart. He could see that Ji Rufeng had secretly coveted the family head position for many years. He could no longer wait and wanted to seize power now. Yet, Ji Rufeng had openly brought up the Ji family's rules, leaving him and the 4 elders with no way to refute. If he didn't dare to accept the test, he would have to hand over the family head token. This was exactly what Ji Rufeng wanted. If he entered the clan's forbidden area, it was very likely that he would die there. This was also the outcome that Ji Rufeng wished for. In short, no matter what choice he made, Ji Rufeng's scheme would succeed. Ji Tianqing's expression was cold as he remained silent, caught between a rock and a hard place. The 4 elders were also full of worry as they secretly discussed how to deal with this situation. Unfortunately, they couldn't come up with a solution after a long discussion. Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the others all sneered like old foxes as they silently looked at Ji Tianqing. A moment later, Ji Tianqing suddenly raised his head to look at Ji Rufeng and shouted in a low voice, "You want to force me to hand over the family head token to you? Impossible. I'd rather enter the clan's forbidden area and seize the azure crystal." As soon as he finished speaking, the 4 elders were stunned and anxiously tried to dissuade him. Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the others were startled, then sneered mockingly. Afraid that Ji Tianqing would go back on his word, Ji Rufeng hurriedly announced, "All right. Ji Tianqing, since you've already made your decision, then prepare to enter the clan's forbidden area. Today's matter, all the elders and managers are present. Everyone must bear witness to this matter." Ji Changhe and a few other managers with the surname Ji nodded in agreement, and even teased Ji Tianqing in a strange manner. "Huh, what guts! I'd like to see if you'll still have the guts after entering the clan's forbidden area. He's going to die in the clan's forbidden area at such a young age. What an untimely death. Young people are impulsive and don't think before doing things. How pitiful. Old Fourth is now in seclusion to heal. If he comes out and finds out that his precious son is dead, I wonder how sad he'll be." Ji Tianqing's expression was cold as he remained silent. His gaze swept over Ji Changhe and the other elders, committing their ugly faces to memory. Laugh to your heart's content. It won't be long before I make you kneel on the ground and repent for your actions today. Chapter 60. The Ji clan's forbidden area was located in the depths of the Ji mansion's back garden. Ever since Ji Tianqing could remember, he had been strictly warned not to go near that area. Not only that, but apart from the master of the Ji mansion, anyone who went near the forbidden area would be severely punished. Such strict rules made the area called Yan Qinghu a taboo for everyone in the Ji mansion. It was very dangerous and mysterious. Apart from the master of the Ji mansion who could enter the forbidden area, no one in the Ji mansion could enter. No one knew what kind of secrets were hidden in that forbidden area. Ji Tianqing had already made his decision. No matter how dangerous the forbidden area of Yan Qinghu was, he had to give it a try. After making some preparations, he left the Ji mansion's main hall and went to the back garden. Ji Rufeng also led the elders and managers to follow Ji Tianqing to the back garden. In the large back garden, there were artificial mountains, pavilions, lotus ponds, and bamboo forests. A cool breeze blew through the garden. Flowers, grass, and leaves filled the eyes. The scenery was very pleasant. Ji Rufeng and the others sat in the pavilion and had the maids bring them tea and fruits. They chatted with smiles on their faces. Ji Tianqing walked alone into the depths of the garden. After passing through a dense bamboo forest, he arrived at an old high wall. This high wall was built with dark green stones. The wall was full of cracks and green moss grew on it. It looked very dilapidated. 10 meters in front of him, there was a 5-meter-tall bronze gate in the high wall. The bronze door was tightly shut. Green rust had already grown on it, making it look very mottled. The tall wall was surrounded by weeds that were half a man's height. It looked very desolate. Ji Tianqing had never been here before. He didn't know that the Ji mansion had such a desolate and dilapidated place. Moreover, the dilapidated stone wall and the rusty bronze door were filled with an ancient and mysterious aura. He stood in front of the bronze door and looked around with keen eyes. He saw a black stone tablet that was more than 10 meters tall in the grass not far away. There were 3 dark red words on the stone tablet. Yan Qinghu. Ji Tianqing stared at the black stone tablet and murmured in a low voice, "This is the forbidden area of the Ji clan's Yan Qing Lake. I wonder what kind of dangers are hidden behind that bronze gate." With a heart full of doubts, he walked to the front of the bronze door, reached out his hands to grab the rusty bronze door knocker, and pushed the bronze door with force. However, the bronze door did not move at all. Instead, it lit up with a layer of pale yellow light. It was a light curtain as thick as a palm, but it was as solid and thick as a city wall, firmly protecting the bronze gate. He immediately had a bad premonition and subconsciously wanted to loosen his grip, but it was too late. Boom! With a muffled sound, the pale yellow light screen exploded with a powerful force, sending him flying backward and tumbling into the grass 10 meters away. Ji Tianqing was dizzy from the fall, and his arms were numb and sore. He temporarily lost consciousness. He shook his dizzy head and crawled up from the grass. With a serious expression, he said, "There's actually a formation protecting it. No wonder no one is allowed to get close to this place. Only the family head can enter. If that's the case, then the family head must have a way to open the bronze gate." Thinking of this, he quickly took out the family head token hanging on his waist, and his sharp eyes searched the bronze gate. He immediately found a clue. There was a diamond-shaped groove next to the bronze door knocker. It was only half the size of a palm, and its shape was exactly the same as the family head token. Therefore, Ji Tianqing put the family head token into the groove. Sure enough, the bronze gate reacted. It slowly opened to both sides, making a muffled sound. The layer of pale yellow light curtain protecting the bronze gate also disappeared immediately. The bronze gate was completely open, and a black stone path covered with moss and weeds appeared behind the gate. Ji Tianqing stepped over the bronze gate and walked along the black stone path into the forbidden area of Yan Qing Lake. On both sides of the path, there were trees full of weeds and thorns. Many green vines extended out and spread on the black stone path. Ji Tianqing walked along the black stone path for more than 100 meters. Before he reached the end of the path, he felt a cold and gloomy air blowing against his face. He looked ahead and saw a small inner lake. Judging from the mottled bluestones and countless towering trees beside the lake, this inner lake had been built for at least 100 years. There was no doubt that this was Yan Qing Lake. But what surprised him was that the lake water in Yan Qing Lake had frozen, and it was glowing with a pale blue light. It was noon in April, and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. But the ice on the lake was extremely thick, and it was constantly emitting cold air. Ji Tianqing's breath would cause white mist to come out. He stood beside Yan Qing Lake and looked at the lake with a puzzled face. He was secretly guessing in his heart. At this moment, under the ice in the center of the lake, a huge black shadow suddenly appeared and quickly floated up from the bottom of the lake. Bang! The huge black shadow instantly broke through the thick layer of ice on the lake and appeared above the lake. Countless broken ice pieces burst out in all directions, like streaks of icy blue sword light. The entire ice surface of Yan Qing Lake also cracked, and dense cracks spread out in all directions. Ji Tianqing subconsciously stepped back and dodged the countless ice pieces. When he looked up and saw the huge black shadow in the center of the lake, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he revealed a look of disbelief. That huge black shadow was a gigantic demonic beast. Its appearance was like a giant python, but it also looked like a legendary dragon. Its body that extended out of the lake and stood in mid-air was at least 10 meters tall. Its body was as thick as a water tank, and its surface was covered with dark scales, which were emitting a metallic luster under the sun. There was a sharp horn on its huge head, and 2 rows of black dragon whiskers on both sides of its wide and flat mouth. Under its belly that was covered with black dragon scales, there were 2 pairs of sharp dragon claws that were shining with cold light. It looked down at Ji Tianqing from above, and its dark golden eyes revealed a gloomy and cold aura. Ji Tianqing stared at it with his eyes wide open. He was shocked and excited, and his body was slightly trembling. His heart was surging, and his heart was beating faster. He thought to himself, that's not a normal demonic beast, and not a giant python, that's a dragon. It's the legendary flood dragon. Although the flood dragon only existed in legends, and he had never seen it with his own eyes, he had only seen a few descriptions and records in the history books. But the black and cold giant in front of him was incomparably handsome, and its aura was powerful and intimidating. It was definitely not an ordinary demonic beast. Therefore, Ji Tianqing dared to conclude that it was the legendary flood dragon. However, he quickly calmed down, and his heart was filled with doubts. The legendary flood dragon is a powerful divine beast that can fly in the sky and travel through the earth. It almost never appears in the mortal world. Our Ji family is just a small family in the small imperial Qing dynasty. How could there be a flood dragon in the family's forbidden area? The 5th chapter has been delivered. Please add it to the bookshelf and give me a few recommendation tickets. Chapter 61. Ji Tianqing was shocked by the appearance of the flood dragon. He found it inconceivable. However, in his heart, he was even more puzzled. While he was frowning, the black flood dragon silently approached him and stood on the surface of the lake 20 meters away from him. The flood dragon stared at him with its cold, dark golden eyes. It moved its mouth and spoke in a deep voice. Damn the Ji family. The flood dragon's voice sounded a little strange, and its tone was a little awkward, but it could still be heard clearly. A hint of surprise flashed across Ji Tianqing's eyes. It's actually another demonic beast that can talk. In his impression, no matter if it was a mid-level or high-level demon beast, it was impossible for them to speak. A demon beast that could speak must be at the level of a demon king. However, although the flood dragon in front of him had a powerful aura, it did not seem like a legendary demon king. Moreover, Ji Tianqing found it difficult to connect the Ji family with a demon king. The legendary demon king had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. He could easily destroy a country. How could the Ji family control such a ferocious expert? Ji Tianqing looked up at the black flood dragon and asked tentatively, "Flood dragon, aren't you the guardian demon beast of the Ji family's forbidden area? Why do you hate the Ji family so much?" The flood dragon's eyes were filled with hatred. It sneered, "Guardian of the Ji family? Ha ha ha. I can't wait to kill everyone in the Ji family. Boy. You are also preparing to inherit the position of family head and come to Yan Qinghu Lake to seize the blue crystal, right? With your weak strength, this flood dragon can tear you to pieces with one claw." As soon as it finished speaking, it stretched out its dragon claw at lightning speed and grabbed at Ji Tianqing. The biting cold air suddenly hit his face and almost froze his body. His blood was about to solidify. His expression changed and he immediately jumped back 8 meters away from the lake. Bang! The flood dragon's black claw missed and slammed into the ice lake's shore, creating a 5-meter-wide crater on the ground and shaking the earth. Several large green millstone stones were also smashed into pieces by the flood dragon's giant claws, turning into countless pieces that shot out in all directions. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's pupils constricted, and a chill ran down his spine. His heart was filled with horror. The flood dragon was so powerful that it was hard for him to muster up any fighting spirit. His combat strength was not on the same level as the flood dragon at all. Damned bastard, don't even think about escaping. The flood dragon roared angrily. Its body suddenly jumped out of the lake and pounced on Ji Tianqing. However, as soon as its 30-meter-long body flew into the air and its tail was exposed above the surface of the lake, its body stopped abruptly. Only then did Ji Tianqing see clearly that there was a black iron chain as thick as a bucket tied to the dragon's tail. One end of the chain was tied to the flood dragon's tail, while the other end was connected to the bottom of the lake, making it impossible for the flood dragon to leave the ice lake. At the same time, a dark yellow barrier suddenly appeared in the sky. The huge dark yellow barrier was like a canopy covering the sky. It was like a huge bowl that was turned upside down, covering the entire Yanqing Lake. The flood dragon's huge head and body slammed into the dark yellow barrier, and a loud bang was heard. The dark yellow barrier flickered with brilliance and burst out with boundless power. The flood dragon's body trembled violently and rolled into the ice lake. Splash! In the loud bang, the ice lake was smashed into a huge wave a few meters high, and tens of thousands of ice shards burst out. Ji Tianqing, who was hiding 10 meters away from the lakeside, was also drenched by the ice-cold lake water. He was also hit by countless ice shards, causing severe pain all over his body. He looked up at the dark yellow barrier in the sky with a face full of shock. He could not help but exclaim, "It's a barrier array. I didn't expect that the ancestor would set up such a huge barrier that covered the entire Yanqing Lake. No wonder the flood dragon was imprisoned here and could not escape after 100 years. The forbidden area of Yanqing Lake was created after the Ji family's ancestor built the Ji mansion. The barrier array was naturally set up by the Ji family's ancestor. It was only with this massive formation that they were able to imprison the serpent dragon and protect the secret of the forbidden grounds. The barrier array covered everything in Yanqing Lake. Even if someone looked down from the sky near the Ji mansion, they would not be able to see the forbidden area of Yanqing Lake, let alone discover the existence of the flood dragon. Ji Tianqing's heart was full of shock. He thought to himself, "I didn't expect the ancestor of our Ji family to have such a powerful method. No wonder my Ji family could become one of the 4 great families of the royal Azure dynasty and still prosper for more than 100 years. I just don't know where the Ji family's ancestor, who established such a foundation, is now." At this time, the flood dragon was rolling in the ice lake for a while, rolling up layers of huge waves. It gradually calmed down after a long time. Once again, the flood dragon emerged from the lake. Its 10-meter-tall upper body stood above the lake and glared at Ji Tianqing from above. "Coward as timid as a mouse. Didn't you want to succeed the family head? Didn't you want to take this dragon's blue crystal? Come on. Don't retreat and hide. Come and fight with this dragon." The flood dragon roared with a murderous aura, its eyes flashing with murderous intent. If it was before, Ji Tianqing would not be able to fight the flood dragon head-on. The flood dragon's strength was too strong. A casual swipe of its claw would be enough to crush him into pieces. But it was different now. Yanqing Lake had a barrier array set up by the Ji family's ancestor, suppressing the flood dragon and preventing it from escaping. At the bottom of the lake, there was a black cold iron chain that firmly imprisoned the flood dragon, preventing it from leaving the ice lake. Ji Tianqing's heart calmed down a lot. His blood rushed through his body, bursting with a strong battle intent. He looked up at the flood dragon and shouted angrily, "Since you're so cruel, I won't hold back." Then, he put his index and middle fingers together and used the sword technique of the sword heart path to activate the sword embryo in his body. 4 rays of golden sword chi burst out. Ever since he talked with the sword soul in the burial of heaven in the Kenshin tomb, he had comprehended some of the secrets of the sword heart path in recent days. The flowing light sword net was only one of the secrets he had comprehended. The other secret he had comprehended was the way to control the sword chi. It was the second level of the sword heart path's cultivation technique. This level of the cultivation technique was not only the way to cultivate the vital core, but also the sword technique to control the sword chi. He held the sword technique with both hands and used the sword technique to coordinate with his spiritual will. His control of the sword chi could reach a state of telepathy, like an extension of his arm. Most importantly, the range of his sword chi attack had doubled, reaching a range of 10 meters. Swish! 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 4 rays of golden sword chi suddenly flew out of his body, dragging 4 rays of golden light behind them as they stabbed toward the flood dragon's abdomen. The flood dragon clearly did not expect Ji Tianqing to use such a method to launch an attack. It was immediately stunned. It could not dodge the attack of the sword chi and was stabbed in the abdomen by the 4 rays of sword chi. However, the sharp and fierce sword chi was blocked by the black dragon scales on its abdomen, and 2 crisp, ding-ding, sounds were heard. The flood dragon was not hurt at all, and its eyes were full of disdain. "Kid, is this all you've got? Are you trying to tickle me?" Brothers, I'll continue to update today. There are a total of 5 chapters. Please add it to your bookshelf. Please recommend it. Please reward me. Please support me, brothers. Chapter 62. The flood dragon's disdainful and arrogant attitude made Ji Tianqing furious. But he was not impulsive. He sneered as he controlled the sword chi to attack. "Flood dragon, aren't you trying to provoke me to enter the ice lake to fight with you? Unfortunately, your provocation is too clumsy. I won't fall for it." Under his control, the 4 golden sword chis immediately split into 16, circling around the flood dragon and constantly attacking it. The golden sword chi drew a golden stream of light in the air and condensed into a sword net of light. The sharp sword chi constantly stabbed the flood dragon's head and body, producing a series of ding-ding-ding-ding sounds. But the flood dragon's body was covered in dense black dragon scales and the sword chi could not hurt it at all. The flood dragon was killed by the sword net for a long time, but it still stood on the surface of the lake unscathed. It lowered its head and stared at Ji Tianqing. It sneered contemptuously, "Too weak. Little worm, your strength is too weak. You think I can't do anything to you just because I can't leave the lake? Too naive." As it finished speaking, the flood dragon crazily twisted its body and swung its huge head, fiercely hitting the sword net of light. With a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds, Ji Tianqing's sword net of light was broken into pieces. The 16 sword chi were all bounced off. "Kid, go to hell." The flood dragon bellowed contemptuously. It opened its mouth and shot out 6 icy blue water arrows at Ji Tianqing at lightning speed. Swish swish swish. With a sharp piercing sound, the 6 icy blue water arrows instantly shot in front of Ji Tianqing. The bone-chilling cold air hit him in the face, causing his body to stiffen as if he was frozen. His dodging speed was also reduced by half. Bang bang. Even though he tried his best to dodge, he was still hit by 2 icy blue water arrows. Although the icy blue water arrows were condensed from the lake water, they contained powerful ice elemental chi. Its power was no less than the sword radiance of a mystic comprehending realm expert. Ji Tianqing's right leg and arm were hit by the arrow. Immediately, 2 bloody holes appeared on his body, and dark red blood gushed out. A bone-piercing pain came, causing his face to become as pale as paper, and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Enduring the pain, he retreated another 10 meters and hid behind a few boulders on the shore. "Ha ha ha. Weak and pitiful worm, what else can you do other than hide?" The flood dragon's eyes became even more contemptuous as it mocked in a low voice. "With your insignificant strength, you want to snatch this dragon's blue crystal? Compared to the previous patriarchs, you are simply a piece of trash without the strength to truss up a chicken." No matter how the flood dragon taunted, Ji Tianqing turned a deaf ear to its words. He hid behind the green boulder and hurriedly took out the hemostatic powder and gauze from his 100 treasures brocade pouch and quickly bandaged the wounds on his arms and legs. But at this moment, the flood dragon once again spat out a dozen icy blue water arrows, shooting towards the boulders where Ji Tianqing was hiding. Pang pang pang. The ground within a radius of 20 meters was instantly blasted into a large crater by the terrifying power of the icy blue water arrows. A few green boulders the size of millstones were also smashed into pieces by the water arrows. Ji Tianqing didn't even have time to dodge before he was sent flying by the violent blast. He rolled and crashed into the bamboo forest not far away. Although he was not directly hit by the icy blue water arrows, he was still dizzy from the violent blast. His internal organs were churning, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He struggled to get up from the bamboo forest, only to find that the 100 treasures brocade pouch hanging on his waist had dropped on the open ground that was full of gravel. He was about to pick up the pouch when the little ice fox, Qianyu, flew out of the pouch. It flapped its little wings and flew in the air. It even used its little paws to rub its sleepy eyes and yawned. "Old Ji. What are you doing? You made such a big noise and even threw me out." "I was sleeping soundly." Qianyu looked around and did not forget to complain to Ji Tianqing to express its strong dissatisfaction. Suddenly, it saw that there was a huge crater under its feet, and Ji Tianqing was lying in the bamboo forest covered in blood. It suddenly asked in surprise, "Wow, old Ji, what are you doing? How did you get hurt?" Ji Tianqing glanced at it and did not say anything. He looked coldly at the dragon in the ice lake. Qianyu then realized that something was wrong. It quickly turned to look at the ice lake not far away. When it saw the dragon in the air above the lake, its eyes widened and its mouth opened wide. It let out a cry of surprise. "Oh my God! What a big dragon! It's the dragon of the East Sea." It looked at Ji Tianqing in shock and excitement and asked anxiously, "Old Ji, what time is it now? Where are we? Did you leave the Tianshan region and come to the East Sea? Don't tell me the injuries on your body were caused by the dragon? Wow! Old Ji, aren't you too brave? How dare you fight with the dragon? Do you want to die?" Qianyu said a lot of things in excitement. Its tone was both shocked and excited. It probably did not expect that after sleeping for a few days in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, it would meet the mysterious dragon of the East Sea. Ji Tianqing looked at it jumping up and down in excitement, but he could not squeeze out a smile. Seeing that Qianyu was so excited and wanted to know the cause and effect, he could only explain. "This is not the East Sea, it's the Ji family's forbidden area. I must get the blue crystal to become the next patriarch." Qianyu was stunned. Its eyes were filled with disbelief. It pointed at the dragon and said, "Old Ji. This is clearly the dragon clan that only exists in the endless East Sea. How could it appear in your Ji family's forbidden area? Old Ji, there is definitely something wrong with your Ji family's ancestor. There must be some secret that you don't know. Otherwise, this little dragon would not appear here." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Qian, you are right. Our Ji family's ancestor is indeed very mysterious. However, he has disappeared for almost 100 years. No one knows why there is a dragon here. That dragon had been imprisoned in the Yanqing Lake for 100 years. During this time, it had never seen other demonic beasts, especially one that could talk like Qianyu. It had been staring at Qianyu with cold eyes. No one knew what it was thinking. When it heard the words, "Little Jiao Dragon," it immediately became unhappy. Its eyes flashed with anger and ferocious light. "Damn you stinky fox! You little thing, who are you calling a little dragon?" Qianyu turned its head to look at the dragon. It flapped its little wings and flew close to it. It said with a mocking tone, "Nonsense, of course I'm talking about you. Although you are big, you are not an adult yet. You are only an 8-year-old human child. The dragon's eyes were filled with anger. It shouted coldly, "Bastard! You are the one who is not an adult. You little stinky fox, you are not even fully grown yet you dare to call me a little dragon?" Qian Yu was also angry. She shouted in a sharp voice, "You damn stinky dragon! How can you talk to a girl like that? Do you have any shame? You are a disgrace to the East Sea Dragon tribe. Moreover, I have only temporarily lost my power. I can't show my true form. In front of my real body, you are nothing more than a small black earthworm. I can smash you into meat paste with one claw." The dragon avoided Qian Yu's eyes. It said in a low muffled voice, "Humph. You think this is all I have? If my dragon crystal had not been taken away, my power would not have dropped so much and I would not be imprisoned in this lake." Ji Tianqing watched the two of them quarrel like children. He could not help but sneer, "Huh, the dragon was so fierce just now. Now it is afraid of Qian Yu." Chapter 63. The Flood Dragon and Qian Yu continued to argue for a while, but soon, the Flood Dragon was at a disadvantage. With its intelligence and eloquence, it was no match for the cunning Qian Yu. Moreover, the Flood Dragon could tell that Qian Yu's bloodline was extraordinary. At its peak, Qian Yu was much stronger than it. With its confidence waning, it stopped arguing with Qian Yu and kept quiet. Qian Yu scolded the Flood Dragon to vent its anger. Seeing that the Flood Dragon was imprisoned in the ice lake without freedom, it pitied it and began to chat with it. After talking for a while, they realized that their experiences were basically the same. They were both deprived of their lifetime's cultivation and imprisoned for hundreds of years. The Flood Dragon felt a sense of closeness to Qian Yu and did not attack Ji Tianqing. Qian Yu comforted it and flew back to Ji Tianqing's side. It looked at Ji Tianqing with a dignified expression and said, "Old Ji. No matter why this Flood Dragon appeared in the Ji clan's forbidden area, no matter what secret your ancestor has, you must release this Flood Dragon. The East Sea Flood Dragon clan must not appear in the human world. Otherwise, not only will the Ji clan suffer a great calamity, I'm afraid the royal Azure dynasty will be destroyed under the wrath of the Flood Dragon clan." Ji Tianqing frowned and shook his head. Qian, you want me to release it? How is that possible? This evil Flood Dragon is so powerful and has been imprisoned here for hundreds of years. It hates the Ji clan to the core. If I let it go, it will definitely destroy the Ji clan and kill everyone. Qian Yu thought for a moment and came up with an idea. Its eyes flashed with a cunning light. "Hee, old Ji, you're so stupid. What does this little Flood Dragon desire the most? Freedom. As long as you release it and give it freedom, it will definitely agree to your conditions and not take revenge on the Ji clan." Ji Tianqing was still frowning and asked doubtfully, Qian, your method is not reliable. Even if it agrees to not take revenge on the Ji clan in exchange for freedom, who can guarantee that it won't go back on its words? Qian Yu quickly explained, "Old Ji, you don't know, the Dragon clan values promises and oaths the most. If you negotiate with the Flood Dragon and let it swear in the name of the Dragon God, it will never go back on its words." Ji Tianqing thought in his mind. He weighed the pros and cons and the possible consequences. Although he did not know why the Dragon clan's ancestor imprisoned the Black Dragon in the lake. However, it seemed that this Black Serpent Dragon would not be of any help to the Ji clan. Instead, it would be a disaster. A moment later, he made up his mind and nodded to Qian Yu, "All right, I'll try to talk to it." He supported the wound on his leg and walked out of the bamboo forest. He came to the shore of the ice lake and looked up at the Flood Dragon with a serious expression. "He Qian Long Qian, Ji Dragon Qian, we Qians. Qian, and asked Qian, and it Qian. Ji Tianqing's face was calm as he said, "It wasn't my intention to fight you and steal your blue crystal. I have my own difficulties. You have been imprisoned here for 100 years. Not only have you lost your powers, you have also lost your freedom. This is not your intention either. Therefore, you can use your blue crystal to exchange for your freedom." The black dragon's pupils shrank, and its eyes were filled with surprise. You mean, you are willing to let me leave this place?" Ji Tianqing nodded. "Of course. The cold iron chain on your tail is a top-grade Xian weapon made by the Ji clan's workshop. It is impervious to fire and water and will not rot for 1,000 years. The cold iron chain's lock mechanism and array is the Ji clan's 9-door lock technique. I can help you open the chain." The black dragon was excited, and its eyes shone. "Boy, are you sure you are not lying to me? You really want to let me leave this place?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What? You don't want to leave?" "Of course I want to leave." The black dragon nodded and growled anxiously. "I have been imprisoned here for 100 years. I have always wanted to leave this place. Although I have been imprisoned in Yanqing Lake for as long as I can remember. I am a noble dragon. I should soar in the 9 heavens and roam the endless eastern sea. I will not be trapped in this little pond forever." After growling for a while, it looked down at Ji Tianqing and asked in a low voice, "Boy, if I give you the blue crystal, will you let me go?" Ji Tianqing nodded again. "Yes. But I want you to swear in the name of the dragon god that after you get your freedom, you will not take revenge on the Ji clan or hurt me or the Ji clan." "No." The black dragon shook its head subconsciously and growled angrily. "Damn the Ji clan. They imprisoned me for 100 years. I hate that I cannot." Halfway through its words, it suddenly saw Ji Tianqing's face turn cold. Cold light flashed in his eyes and it immediately shut its mouth. It hesitated and struggled for a long time before it finally made up its mind. "All right. For freedom. I promise you." The cold light in Ji Tianqing's eyes finally disappeared. "Then swear in the name of the dragon god." The black serpent dragon was still worried and questioned him twice more. After confirming that Ji Tianqing wouldn't lie to it, it said with a solemn expression, "I swear in the name of the dragon god that if Ji Tianqing keeps his promise and lets me go, I will let bygones be bygones. I will never take revenge on the Ji family, and I will never harm Ji Tianqing and his family." The black dragon's voice was solemn and loud, revealing a solemn and majestic aura. As its voice fell, invisible restraints descended from the unseen world, drilling into its body and lingering around its dragon soul. It was the binding of an oath made in the name of the dragon god. If Ji Tianqing kept his promise and it went back on its word, its dragon soul would be destroyed by the invisible binding and its soul would be destroyed. After making the oath, the black dragon dug out a black dragon scale from its forehead and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not know what was going on and reached out to take the palm-sized black dragon scale. "Black dragon, are you sure you're not lying to me? The so-called blue crystal is your dragon scale?" This palm-sized dragon scale was completely black and cold. It was not made of metal, but it gave off a metallic luster. It was heavier than metal. The black dragon narrowed its eyes at Ji Tianqing's questioning and said coldly, "I have already sworn in the name of the dragon god. Of course I won't lie to you. Inject your true yuan into the dragon scale and you'll understand." Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. His true yuan flowed out of his palm and into the black dragon scale. Immediately, the dragon scale shone with an icy blue light and changed. After a few breaths, the black dragon scale turned into a rhombus-shaped icy blue crystal. Chapter 64. Ji Tianqing held the blue crystal in his hand and felt a bone-chilling aura enter his body, almost freezing him. This crystal contained a vast amount of energy and seemed to have some miraculous effects. He thought to himself that if he could refine the power of this blue crystal, he would gain great benefits and his strength would increase greatly. But at this moment, the black flood dragon saw him staring at the blue crystal in a daze and reminded him in a low voice, "Kid, I've already made an oath. It's time for you to fulfill your promise." Ji Tianqing hurriedly put away the blue crystal and said to the black flood dragon, "Then try to get as close to the lake as possible and expose the lock of the cold iron chain. I'll help you open it." The black flood dragon did as he was told. Its huge body crawled by the lake and its dragon tail was exposed above the lake's surface. Ji Tianqing hurriedly walked to the side of the lake and examined the dragon tail and the cold iron chain closely. Only then did he see clearly that the cold iron chain was deeply embedded in the dragon tail's flesh and was stuck in the dragon bone. The white dragon bone was exposed from the wound and the flesh around it had already rotted away. Although the black flood dragon had a strong self-healing ability and the wound would heal slowly. But with the cold iron chain on the tail, even if new flesh grew around the wound, it would rot away again. Ji Tianqing jumped into the lake and swam 7 or 8 meters to the tail of the flood dragon while enduring the bone-chilling cold. He used his family's method of cracking the lock with both hands and inserted his true essence into it. In just 30 breaths, he successfully opened the cold iron chain. The black flood dragon was finally free and regained its freedom. When Ji Tianqing opened the cold iron chain and took it out of the dragon's tail bone, he threw it into Yanqing Lake. It could no longer hold back the excitement in its heart and rushed into the sky, letting out an excited and high-pitched dragon roar. At that moment, it emitted an extremely holy, powerful and majestic aura. That was the dragon's breath unique to the dragon race. Ji Tianqing's face turned pale from the invisible dragon's breath. He felt his blood and qi flow in reverse and almost spat out blood. He resisted the churning of his internal organs and quickly swam back to the shore. Right at this moment, the entire Yanqing Lake started to shake violently, and huge waves that were over 10 feet high surged up from the surface of the lake. The ground around the ice lake was also cracking, and the bamboo forest was collapsing into the ground. Hundreds of towering trees also collapsed and fell into Yanqinghu Lake. The earth-shattering commotion caused Ji Tianqing's expression to change dramatically. He was shocked in his heart. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the sky and saw that the spirit formation that enveloped Yanqinghu in the sky had actually shattered and collapsed. The dark yellow barrier, which was as huge as the sky, cracked open, bursting with an incomparably violent power. In the blink of an eye, the dark yellow barrier completely collapsed, turning into a tornado-like dark yellow pillar of light that swept towards the black Jiao dragon. The black flood dragon had just regained its freedom and was circling in the air. The hurricane formed by the spirit formation swept over. It simply had nowhere to run, and was instantly swept into the hurricane. No matter how powerful it was, it could not escape from the hurricane. Not only that, but its 30-meter-long body was also rapidly shrinking under the suppression of the hurricane. Ah! How could this be? The black Jiao dragon was filled with fear as it let out an anxious roar. However, the hurricane continued to shrink, suppressing its body until it was smaller and smaller. About half a quarter of an hour later, the terrifying dark yellow hurricane finally disappeared. The black Jiao dragon was almost killed by the hurricane, but it managed to escape. The violently shaking Yanqinghu Lake gradually calmed down. Ji Tianqing and Xian Yu looked at the black Jiao dragon again. When they saw its appearance, they were stunned. How could this be? How did the black Jiao dragon shrink 10 times its size? He. This arrogant little dragon finally experienced what I felt when I shrunk my body. The black Jiao dragon was also stunned. It floated in the air and looked down at its own body. Its eyes were filled with fear. Why? Why did this happen? Originally, its body was over 30 meters long, and its body was huge and majestic. Now, its appearance had not changed, but its body had shrunk by 10 times. It was only 3 meters long. At first glance, no one would think that it was a Jiao dragon. They would think that it was a black python. The black Jiao dragon could not accept this result. It flew madly in the air and roared to vent its anger. In the end, after flying around Yangqingwu crazily for more than 10 rounds, its strength was exhausted and it fell into Yangqingwu Lake. Xianyu laughed gloatingly and did not forget to clap with its little paws. The corners of Ji Tianqing's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but laugh. A dignified divine beast flood dragon was actually exhausted from flying and fell into the lake. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. The black Jiao dragon flopped around in the lake for a while before returning to the shore. It lay on a huge rock in a rather sorry state and muttered in a daze, "Why is it like this? Damned bastard, back then you took away my dragon crystal and imprisoned me here. And now, you've even set up such a formation to reduce my dragon body to such a tiny size. Ah! I am so angry." The black Jiao dragon was going crazy. Xianyu flew next to it and comforted it with a smile as if she had been there before. "Little Jiao dragon, don't be sad. It's okay to be smaller, you will get used to it in a few days. Only, with your current situation, even if you leave the Ji family, you will not be able to return to the endless Eastern Sea, the territory of the Jiao dragon clan. I think before you leave the Imperial Qing dynasty, you will be caught and eaten by high-level beasts or become a pet of a human elite warrior. TSK, so pitiful." The black serpent dragon's eyes glowed with anger. It used its dragon claws to smash the millstone beneath it into pieces. "Damn it! If the ancestor of the Ji family didn't take away my dragon crystal, I would not be in this situation. My dragon crystal, the power that I have painstakingly cultivated all my life." Xianyu rolled her eyes and a sly smile flashed across her eyes. Suddenly, she thought of an idea. "Little Jiao dragon, since you are so weak now, you will not be able to return to the Jiao dragon clan's territory in the Eastern Sea. Also, if you don't have anyone to protect you, you will not be able to survive in the human world. How about this, you stay with old Ji and slowly recover your strength. When old Ji is strong enough, he will send you back to the Eastern Sea." The black Jiao dragon was stunned for a moment and immediately revealed a thoughtful expression. Ji Tianqing frowned and quickly grabbed Xianyu and asked in a low voice, Qian, what are you doing? Why do I have to protect it and send it back to the Eastern Sea? The Eastern Sea is at the most eastern side of the continent. It is separated by many regions from the Tianshan region. I will not be able to reach the Eastern Sea even if I travel for my entire life. Xianyu revealed a sly smile and used some kind of secret technique to send her voice directly to his ears. She explained, "Old Ji, are you stupid? I am doing this for your own good. This is a Jiao dragon, if you can keep it by your side, you will gain many benefits in the future. As for when you will send it back to the Eastern Sea, isn't that up to you? Maybe 50 years later, or maybe 100 years later, when you are strong enough to travel across large regions, you can send it back to the Eastern Sea." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He whispered, "If that's the case, it is not impossible. Let's see if it agrees." Chapter 65. Ji Tianqing always felt that Qianyu seemed to know a lot. Moreover, Qianyu was too cunning. With just a few words, he had the black serpent dragon fooled. When he tried to ask the black serpent dragon if it was willing to stay, the black serpent dragon only hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. "My current situation is just like what Qianyu said. I can't even leave the Imperial Qing dynasty, much less return to the Eastern Sea. The only thing I can do now is to stay and slowly recover my strength." Ji Tianqing saw that it had agreed and was secretly happy. However, he did not show it on his face and said calmly, "Originally, I didn't want to take you in. After all, you are a big trouble. But for Qian Yu's sake, since you are so sincere, I will reluctantly agree to your request. I can protect you in the human world and send you back to the Eastern Sea in the future. However, you must listen to my orders and don't do anything reckless. The Black Serpent Dragon was not stupid. It knew that once it agreed, it would lose its freedom again. Therefore, it quickly added another condition. Ji Tianqing, I also have a condition. Other than protecting me and sending me back to the Eastern Sea, you have to help me find the dragon crystal. Of course, if you can help me find the dragon crystal, I will be able to recover all my strength. When that time comes, I will not need you to send me back to the Eastern Sea. Help you find the dragon crystal? Ji Tianqing frowned and instinctively wanted to reject. However, Qian Yu quickly gave him a look and secretly persuaded him to agree. Ji Tianqing listened to Qian Yu's advice and agreed to the Black Serpent Dragon's condition. Alright, I promise you. When I am strong enough, I will help you find the dragon crystal or send you back to the Eastern Sea. Although he said it righteously, the Black Serpent Dragon would not believe him so easily. Ji Tianqing, you must swear to the heavens before I can believe you. Ji Tianqing nodded without hesitation and said solemnly, I, Ji Tianqing, swear to the heavens. His tone was solemn and powerful, which calmed the Black Jiao Dragon's heart. Only then did it relax. The matter was thus settled. Ji Tianqing prepared to leave the Yan Qinghu and take the blue crystal back to the house. The Black Serpent Dragon, who had shrunk 10 times, flew to his side and asked, Ji Tianqing, what will happen to me if you leave? Do you still want me to stay here? Ji Tianqing stopped and turned his head to look at it. He couldn't help but reveal a troubled expression. Little Black Serpent Dragon, although your body shrunk down to 10 times, used to you, you're still 3 meters long. You're so big. I can't just bring you out like this, right? If others see you, I won't be able to protect you. The little black dragon also felt that this was reasonable, so it remained silent and didn't say anything. A thoughtful look appeared in its eyes. After a moment of contemplation, it suddenly revealed a hint of joy. I have an idea. It forcefully twisted its 3-meter-long body, and its entire body lit up with a dazzling icy blue brilliance. Its dragon body changed again. In the blink of an eye, the Black Serpent Dragon turned into a 1-meter-long black sword. It flew in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, I'll turn into a sword. This way, you can take me with you. The sword that the Black Serpent Dragon had turned into was completely black. It flickered with a cold light and gave off an extremely sharp aura. The blade was 3 fingers wide and the hilt was like a dragon's body. The surface was covered in fine black dragon scales. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell that this sword was a peerless treasure among swords. It was mighty and extraordinary. Ji Tianqing grasped the sword that the Black Serpent Dragon had turned into. He examined it and couldn't help but smile. Little Black Serpent, this is a good idea. You can maintain your Black Serpent sword form in the future. Qian Yu also looked at the Black Serpent sword. He smiled and said, Hee, little Black Serpent Dragon isn't that stupid. You actually thought of this idea. The Black Serpent Dragon muttered in dissatisfaction, Stinky fox, how is this dragon stupid? It's clearly you who is too cunning. Ji Tianqing ignored their bickering and left Yan Qinghu with the Black Serpent sword. After leaving the forbidden area, he took down the family head command medallion on the bronze gate. The gate closed with a creak. When he passed through the bamboo forest and returned to the back garden, he found that there was no one in the gazebo. He raised his head to look at the sky and realized that it was already the afternoon. 4 hours had passed since he entered the forbidden area of Yan Qinghu. Second Uncle Ji Rufeng and the others probably thought that I died in the forbidden area. Ji Tianqing inwardly sneered. He quickly left the back garden and rushed to the main hall of the Ji mansion. Sure enough, when he arrived at the entrance of the main hall, he heard a commotion coming from inside. Many of the managers were arguing loudly and emotionally. Third Uncle Ji Changhe's voice was mixed in as well. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the main hall, he heard Ji Tianqing proudly sneering, "Hee hee, 4 hours have passed. That brat Ji Tianqing is already dead. What are you waiting for? Don't tell me you think that kid, Ji Tianqing, will be able to walk out of the forbidden area alive with his strength? I think you are all living in a dream. Ha ha ha." Shortly after, second Uncle Ji Rufeng's sonorous voice sounded out. "Everyone, don't waste any more time. With Ji Tianqing's strength, he is already dead. For managers, don't take any chances. Now, this seat will temporarily take over the position of family head and help the Ji family safeguard the family head command medallion." Ji Rufeng's voice was deep and powerful. It was filled with unquestionable dominance and confidence. But before he could finish speaking, he stopped abruptly. The confident smile on his face froze. He stood up with a swish and stared at the entrance of the main hall with wide eyes. His face was full of disbelief. Third Elder and the other managers were about to speak when they saw Ji Rufeng's reaction. They all subconsciously turned to look at the entrance. They saw Ji Tianqing, whose robes were stained with blood, holding the black dragon sword and walking steadily into the main hall. His expression was cold. His gloomy eyes swept over Ji Changhe and the other managers. Finally, they fell on Ji Rufeng. "Second uncle, you want to temporarily take over the family head command medallion?" Ji Tianqing stared at Ji Rufeng with a cold smile. He said in a low voice, "Hee hee, in your next life." Then, he took out the azure crystal from his sleeve and held it in his palm, presenting it to everyone. "I've got the azure crystal." Suddenly, the main hall was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. The 12 elders and managers all stared at the azure crystal in Ji Tianqing's palm. Their faces were full of shock. Ji Tianqing put away the azure crystal and held the family head command medallion in his hand. He said word by word, "From now on, I, Ji Tianqing, am the new family head of the Ji family. Whoever covets the position of family head and vainly tries to divide the Ji family will be killed without mercy." The entire hall was silent. The 4 external managers were pleasantly surprised. After coming to their senses, they immediately applauded and cheered for Ji Tianqing. Ji Rufeng's expression became extremely ugly. His heart fell from the clouds to hell. His heart was full of anger. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. His whole body trembled. 5 chapters have been updated. Brothers, please add this book to your bookshelf on account of little he's diligent 5 chapters a day. Give me a few recommendation votes. I'll be eternally grateful. Chapter 66. Ji Tianqing had returned alive, and had even successfully obtained the azure crystal. Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the others had been smug just now, saying that Ji Tianqing was dead for sure. Now, the 2 of them and the rest of the Ji family felt as if they had been slapped in public. They were so embarrassed that they almost vomited blood. However, Ji Tianqing had followed the family rules and successfully passed the test to obtain the azure crystal. This left Ji Rufeng, Ji Changhe, and the rest speechless. They had suffered a crushing defeat. No matter how unwilling they were, they had no choice but to accept this result and acknowledge Ji Tianqing as the family head. Ji Tianqing glanced at Ji Rufeng and the rest mockingly before leaving the main hall with a cold smile. He returned to the breezy courtyard and immediately entered the secret chamber to treat his injuries and restore his strength. In the celestial forest court, 3,000 meters away from the Ji mansion. It was still the same tall tower in the manor. At this moment, a young man and a young woman were standing at the top of the tower. The young man in a long silver robe was Bai Wuchen. The young woman in a plain white dress with long hair was Yunyao. She stood proudly against the wind and looked into the distance. Her beautiful face revealed a look of astonishment. Just now, I sensed a trace of a dragon's aura. A dragon's aura appeared? She had always been cold and aloof. It was rare for her to be so surprised. Bai Wuchen frowned when he heard her murmuring. His expression was one of surprise. Dragon's aura? How could a dragon's aura appear in the imperial city of the Green Cloud Imperial City? Grand Senior Sister, could it be that you sensed wrongly? Yunyao frowned. She was still focused on the dragon's aura, trying to find the source of the dragon's aura. Unfortunately, the dragon's aura only appeared for a moment before it disappeared immediately. When she heard Bai Wuchen's question, she shook her head gently and said firmly, "Junior brother Bai, don't forget that I have the celestial spirit sacred constitution bloodline. I'm very sensitive to the aura of different races. I can't be wrong." Although the dragon's aura only appeared for a moment before it disappeared, I really sensed the dragon's aura. When she mentioned the bloodline of the celestial spirit sacred constitution, Bai Wuchen stopped smiling and his face became serious. Since Grand Senior Sister's senses can't be wrong, then a dragon really did appear in the imperial city of the Green Cloud Imperial City. But that's impossible. How could a dragon's aura appear in the small imperial city of the Imperial City? Isn't the dragon clan residing in the endless Eastern Sea? How could they cross hundreds of millions of miles and come to the Imperial City? Bai Wuchen was still in disbelief. Yunyao frowned and recalled for a moment. Then, she suddenly thought of something and her eyes flashed. Of the spiritual constitution spiritual constitution spiritual constitution it's it the spiritual it. Bai Wuchen nodded and said, "The Yong and Regent's Shenhui sect? I have also heard of this sect. It was once flourishing and controlled the entire Yong and region. 100 years ago, after the Shenhui sect went through a disaster, its strength declined a lot. However, the Shenhui sect has recovered and is still one of the top 3 sects in the Yong and region." "Yes, that's true." Yunyao nodded slightly and continued, 100 years ago, when the Shenhui sect was in trouble, many masters and elders of the sect fled the sect. No one knows where they went. Along with those elders and experts, many rare spiritual beasts and a divine flood dragon also disappeared. It's said that there's a young elder in the divine Hui sect who's good at refining artifacts. It was this person who took the divine dragon with him when he escaped from the Shenhui sect. That person took the divine flood dragon and left the Shenhui sect, then disappeared. Later, the Shenhui sect sent people to search the entire Yong and region, but they couldn't find it. People from the Shenhui sect even came to the Tianshan region to search for it for many years, but they couldn't find anything in the end. Bai Wuchen raised his eyebrows and his eyes sparkled. He asked tentatively, "Senior Sister, do you mean, the dragon breath you sensed just now has something to do with that?" Yunyao shook her head and said calmly, "I don't know if these two things are related. It's just that when I sensed the dragon breath just now, it reminded me of the past that Master told me." After a moment of silence, she said again, "Junior brother Bai, our sect's entrance competition is in 3 days. How's the preparation for it going?" Bai Wuchen smiled and said, "Senior Sister, don't worry. The competition is ready. With junior brother Hao and the 3 deacons supervising it, there won't be any mistakes. But, there's something I need you to make a decision on." Yunyao looked straight ahead and asked calmly, "What is it?" Bai Wuchen explained, "Among the young disciples who passed the entrance test last month, there was a girl named Ling Yunfei. She was ranked 7th in terms of talent and strength. But she was killed a few days ago. Now there's a vacancy for the entrance competition. How will you deal with it, Senior Sister?" Yunyao looked in the direction of the Ji mansion. An imperceptible light flashed in her eyes. After a moment of silence, she said indifferently, "Since there's a vacancy, we'll give those who didn't pass the entrance test a chance. Junior brother Bai, you'll be in charge of setting up an illusory weapon Xian formation in the city square and announce it to the whole city. If a young warrior can pass this formation in 3 days, he or she will get the vacancy and participate in the entrance competition in 3 days." Bai Wuchen was stunned. He didn't show it on his face, but he thought to himself, why is senior sister doing this? Could it be that she has other intentions? But he didn't ask. He just nodded with a smile and said, "Okay, I'll do as senior sister says." Then, Bai Wuchen bid farewell to Yunyao and left the top of the pagoda. Yunyao was left standing alone at the top of the pagoda. Her eyes were deep in thought. Her figure was extremely slender under the light of the setting sun. Late at night, the Ji mansion was very quiet. Only a few courtyards were lit with lanterns. Ji Tianqing healed himself in the secret chamber for 6 hours. When he was fully recovered, he walked out of the secret chamber. He was about to call Huan and ask her to bring some food from the kitchen. At this moment, there was a slight sound of wind in the small courtyard outside the house. 9 black figures cut through the night like ghosts and landed lightly in the courtyard. These 9 figures were all dressed in black, with masks on their faces and swords on their backs. All of them had extraordinary strength. 8 of them stood in 2 rows in the courtyard. The leader walked to the door and reported in a low voice, "Young master, Mu Shan requests to see you." Ji Tianqing had already sensed that someone had sneaked into the courtyard. He held the black dragon sword in his hand and was on guard. He thought that the other party was an assassin sent by second uncle Ji Rufeng to assassinate him. After all, he had successfully passed through the forbidden area and obtained the blue crystal. He was now the rightful successor to the position of patriarch. Second uncle Ji Rufeng had failed at the last step. It was very likely that he was planning to assassinate him. However, when Ji Tianqing heard the voice outside the door, he immediately let down his guard and a smile appeared on his face. He put away the black dragon sword and said in a low voice, "Come in." The man in black named Mu Shan immediately opened the door and led the 8 men in black into the room. After entering the room, Mu Shan and the others walked to Ji Tianqing and knelt down on one knee. Mu Shan, the vice leader of the Shadow Sword Hall, greets the young master. Chapter 67. The 9 black-clothed men who entered the room were the masters of Shadow Sword Hall. The tall and burly man in the lead was called Mu Shan, the deputy hall master of Shadow Sword Hall. The 8 black-clothed men behind him were all sword envoys of Shadow Sword Hall. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Mu Shan, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Get up quickly." Mu Shan and the 8 sword envoys got up and stood respectfully. Mu Shan took 2 steps forward and came to Ji Tianqing's side. He lowered his voice and reported respectfully, "Young master, I just came back from Yunzhou tonight and was about to report to you about the blood-clothed tower. I just learned about the shocking changes in the mansion. Congratulations to you for passing the test and succeeding the position of master." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and quickly asked, "Have you found out about the blood-clothed tower?" Mu Shan said in a deep voice with a murderous look, "Young master, the blood-clothed tower has been removed from the world. The headquarters and 4 branches of the blood-clothed tower in Yunzhou were all destroyed by Shadow Sword Hall. There were 189 people in the blood-clothed tower, and 181 of them have been killed. Only 8 escaped and are still fleeing. Deputy Hall Masters led 14 sword envoys to hunt down those who escaped in Yunzhou. I rushed back to the imperial city to report the news." After listening to Mu Shan's report, Ji Tianqing nodded with satisfaction and smiled with relief. "Very good. You did a good job. Have you found out who hired the blood-clothed tower assassins to assassinate me? Mu Shan said in a deep voice, Young master, this matter has been investigated. The person who hired the assassins was Gu Hao's biological mother. We have assassinated her. In addition, we have found out that Gu Hao's biological mother was in Hanging Cloud City at that time. The person who tipped her off was Ji Hao's subordinate. Ji Tianqing had never doubted the ability of Shadow Sword Hall. After listening to Mu Shan's report, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth raised into a sneer. I didn't expect that the person who secretly tipped her off was Ji Hao. What a borrowed knife to kill. This cousin of mine is as ambitious as his father, despicable and sinister. Mu Shan did not comment on this matter. He was the vice hall master of the Shadow Sword Hall. He would only obey the orders of the clan head. After a moment of silence, he asked, Young master, the patriarch is currently in seclusion with serious injuries. On the outside, the Ling clan has been making frequent moves, constantly targeting the various properties of the Ji clan. On the inside, second elder and third elder are colluding, conspiring to seize power. Young master, now that you've succeeded as the patriarch, what plans and instructions do you have? Ji Tianqing frowned as he pondered, his eyes flashing with wisdom. A moment later, he said in a deep voice, Let's deal with the Ji clan's internal strife first. Ignore the Ling clan for now. Ling Si Hai is seriously injured and will not dare to invade the Ji mansion in the near future. The Ling family could only do things that were not presentable and secretly retaliated against the Ji family's various businesses. This won't harm the Ji clan's foundation, so the various managers and district masters can still handle it. Mu Shan, put those managers with the surname Ji under house arrest and guard them strictly. Don't let them come in contact with anyone. Kill anyone who resists. In addition, you have to act in secret and do your best to find evidence of their crimes. I want to remove their authority and cut off second elder's wings first, then slowly deal with him. Go, carry it out immediately. After saying that, Ji Tianqing waved his hand. Mu Shan immediately bowed and accepted the order, understood. Then, he led the 8 sword envoys out of the Cool Breeze courtyard and swiftly carried out the order. After Mu Shan and the others left, Ji Tianqing stood in the room for a moment with a thoughtful expression on his face. There are still 3 days before the Sky Pillar sect's entrance competition begins. If I can't enter the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate, I can only stay in the Imperial City and manage the family business, fighting with the various forces and being a landlord for the rest of my life. That's not what I want. Ji Tianqing muttered in a low voice. He secretly clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with a resolute light. Entering the Sky Pillar sect to cultivate had always been his goal and dream. From a long time ago, he was tired of this kind of life. The Royal Azure Imperial City and the Royal Azure Empire were like a cage to him. He wanted to break out of this cage, spread his wings, and soar high. He wanted to cultivate more profound and powerful martial arts and explore the wonderful world outside. After a while, he turned around and entered the secret underground room. He began to cultivate and comprehend the Tao of the Sword Heart. He had already completely grasped the second stage of the Tao of the Sword Heart. He was very proficient in it and had reached the minor accomplishment stage. This stage of the cultivation technique could not only cultivate quintessential essence and increase the power of the sword embryo, but it could also control sword qi as if it was his own arm. Ji Tianqing named this stage of the cultivation technique, sword driving art, and had been diligently cultivating it for the past few days. In the dark secret room, he sat cross-legged in the middle of the quintessential gathering array and calmly pondered. Cultivation is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. I can't slack off for a moment. There are still 3 days. I must cultivate the sword driving art to the greater accomplishment stage in order to unleash my strongest combat strength. Only then will I have the chance to participate in the grand entrance competition and obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After that, Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts and began to focus on cultivating the sword-driving art. At the same time, in the fourth courtyard of the Ji mansion. In the dark secret underground room, there was only a dim oil lamp that lit up with a dim yellow light. Ji Rufeng sat on the wooden armchair with a cold expression. His hands gripped the armrests so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. Obviously, he was extremely angry. His heart was brewing with a monstrous rage. Ji Hao stood beside him. His expression was also very ugly. His eyes were surging with killing intent. After a moment of silence, he finally couldn't help but curse in a low voice. Damn Ji Tianqing! That bastard! How could he break through the forbidden area and obtain the azure crystal? I don't believe it. In the past month, he suddenly returned from the body refinement realm trash to the quintessential realm. Not only did he kill Ling Yunfei, but he also mastered that marvelous sword technique and even succeeded the position of the patriarch. Father! There must be a secret behind this. Ji Tianqing's change is too great. His growth is too fast. There must be a problem. Ji Hao's emotions were agitated. His heart was filled with anger and jealousy. Ji Rufeng frowned and said in a low and deep voice, we all saw Ji Tianqing's change. It is indeed very strange, but there is no point in discussing this now. Just now, this subordinate came to report that Ji Tianqing sent people from the Shadow Sword Hall to put the managers under house arrest and strip them of their authority. He first dealt with those managers. Next, he will deal with me. Ji Hao's angry face twisted. His eyes surged with killing intent. Father, what do we do? Are we just going to sit here and wait for death? Ji Rufeng said expressionlessly, the people from the Shadow Sword Hall have returned. Even if we want to assassinate Ji Tianqing, it is impossible. For now, we can only wait and see. 3 days later, it will be the Sky Pillar sect's entrance competition. Ji Tianqing will definitely think of a way to participate. I have already informed the young prince of what happened today. Just now, the young prince sent me a secret letter and told us to wait patiently for 3 days. 3 days later, the young prince will help us deal with Ji Tianqing in the competition. At that time, Ji Tianqing will be dead. Ji Chongkong will not be a threat and the position of the family head will still be ours. Hearing this, Ji Hao's expression eased a little. However, he pondered for a moment and asked hesitantly, Father, are we really going to rely on the young prince and submit to him? The young prince's ambition is too great. If it is exposed in the future, I'm afraid the entire Ji family will be implicated and executed by the imperial family. Ji Rufeng frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, those who achieve great things must have the courage to cut off all means of retreat. The young prince has the world in his heart and has great ambitions. What is a mere Qingyun kingdom? In the future, the entire 10 countries of the Tianshan region will be in his pocket. If we surrender early, we can still be relied on by him and receive more rewards in the future. Chapter 68. The night passed by quickly. Early the next morning, when Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation had increased a little, and his strength had improved. When he returned to his room, Huan quickly brought him a basin of water and a box of food. She helped him wash up and eat breakfast. While he was eating breakfast, Huan reported a piece of news. Eldest young master, I heard someone in the mansion mention something this morning. Someone from the Sky Pillar sect set up a large formation in the city square and announced that there is a vacancy in the quota for the entrance competition. As long as the young talents of the Imperial City can pass through the formation, they will be qualified to participate in the entrance competition in 2 days. Eldest young master, this is an excellent opportunity for you. Do you want to give it a try? Ji Tianqing was startled. He thought to himself, a vacancy? Is it because Ling Yunfei died? He nodded and smiled, how can I miss such a good opportunity? After breakfast, he left the Ji mansion and took a carriage to the city square. By the time he arrived at the city square, it was already late in the morning. The large square was already packed with people. There were thousands of imperial city citizens and young martial artists. The square was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Ji Tianqing got off the carriage and walked through the crowd with an expressionless face to the center of the square. There was a high platform with a radius of 100 meters. It was surrounded by a white jade fence with many spirit beast statues. Usually, when there was a grand ceremony in the imperial city, it would be held on the high platform. At this moment, there was only a huge dark golden ball of light on the high platform. The ball of light was as big as a courtyard. It was condensed from the energy of the formation. Its surface was shining with a dazzling golden light. Obviously, this was the formation set up by the Sky Pillar sect. The high platform was surrounded by people. Everyone stared at the golden ball of light and whispered to each other. The Sky Pillar sect's disciples are really extraordinary. This is the illusory weapon formation. It is said to be a low-grade profound level formation. A profound grade array can only be set up by a profound grade expert. Normal true energy realm martial artists would have a hard time breaking through it. Those in the body refinement realm definitely have no hope. To be able to break through the array and obtain a spot, one must at least have the strength of the true element boundary. Sigh, it's a pity that we can't see what's going on inside the formation from the outside. I wonder what's so special about this illusory weapon Xian formation. Ji Tianqing passed through the crowd and arrived at the bottom of the high platform. He silently sized up the illusory weapon Xian formation and listened to the discussions of the surrounding warriors. At this moment, the dark golden ball of light on the high platform suddenly flashed with two golden lights. Shwa! A figure flew out of the ball of light and was bounced 10 meters away by the majestic force of the array. He rolled and fell off the high platform. This person was a young martial artist. He was dressed luxuriously and had an extraordinary bearing. However, he was injured in the illusory weapon mystic formation. His clothes were tattered, revealing more than a dozen bloody wounds. His disheveled appearance was very embarrassing. Seeing this person fall off the stage in a sorry state, the surrounding cultivators suddenly let out a burst of exclamations, discussions, and laughter. Isn't that Chu Shengzi? He has the strength of the second level of the true element boundary. How did he fail? Brother, you didn't see it just now, right? Chu Shengzi had just entered the illusory weapon mystic formation for less than half an hour and failed to break through the array and was ejected out. Hehe, what's so strange about Chu Shengzi failing to break through the array? You guys came late and didn't see it. Before Chu Shengzi, there were more than a dozen people who were ejected out with bruises all over their bodies. Sigh, it seems like it's very difficult to obtain that vacant spot. Even the strength of the second level of the true element boundary can't do it. I reckon that the person who can break through the array not only has the strength of the third level of the true element boundary, but also has to be proficient in arrays. Hearing until here, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He secretly looked around and indeed saw a few young martial artists who were injured. They were covered in blood and were in a sorry state. After the dark golden ball ejected Chu Shengzi, a black door appeared. It was obviously the entrance to the array. However, most of the onlookers were just watching the show and didn't dare to try to break through the array. At this moment, a burly young man in black clothes leaped onto the high platform and walked towards the black door. The crowd around the high platform immediately burst into discussions. Look, there's another person who overestimates himself trying to break through the array. I know that person. He's Lu family's Lu Suidao. He reached the 3rd level of the true element boundary not long ago. I heard that he was cultivating in seclusion previously and missed the Sky Pillar Sect's entrance test. He has always regretted it, so he vowed to obtain that vacant spot this time. Lu Suidao went in. I wonder if he can break through. Ji Tianqing listened to the discussions around him and stared at Lu Suidao with interest as he watched him enter the illusory weapon mystic formation. After Lu Suidao entered the array, the black door disappeared. The dark golden ball was very quiet and didn't emit any sound. The crowd couldn't see the situation inside the array. About 7 minutes later, the dark golden ball suddenly flickered with 2 rays of golden light. Swish! Lu Suidao was ejected and fell off the high platform with blood all over his body. He lay on the ground in a sorry state. There was another burst of discussion in the crowd. Many people felt that it was a pity. After Lu Suidao struggled to get up and limped away, no one dared to go on the stage for a long time. After a full 15 minutes, a young martial artist in a white robe with an imposing appearance jumped onto the high platform. Seeing the white-robed young man on the stage, the onlookers all revealed surprised expressions and started to discuss again. Everyone, look! It's Jiang Baiyu. Jiang Baiyu actually wants to break through the array? He has the strength of the 5th level of the true element boundary and is ranked in the top 10 in the nation. No. Jiang Baiyu has already passed the entrance test and obtained the spot to participate in the tournament. Why does he still want to break through the array? Humph. You don't understand, right? Jiang Baiyu is breaking through the array to gain fame. If he successfully breaks through the array, he will definitely impress the Sky Pillar Sect. When he enters the Sky Pillar Sect in the future, he will definitely receive preferential treatment and be heavily nurtured by the sect. I see. This Jiang Baiyu is quite ambitious. Ji Tianqing's expression was calm as he watched Jiang Baiyu enter the array. A playful smile appeared on his face. He had seen the black and white heroes at the Dragon Gates banquet and had some impression of Jiang Baiyu. He wanted to see if the conceited Jiang Baiyu could get what he wanted. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The dark golden light ball suddenly flickered with 2 rays of golden light, and a white figure was ejected out. It was Jiang Baiyu. His white robe was stained with blood, and his hair was disheveled as he fell off the stage. He rolled a few times before coming to a stop. He had confidently stepped onto the stage to break through the array under everyone's gazes, but he didn't expect to end up in such a sorry state. Jiang Baiyu was so ashamed that he wanted to die. He crawled up with a dirty face and hurriedly left the square through the crowd. When the martial artists around the high platform saw that even Jiang Baiyu couldn't break through the array, they instantly burst into an uproar and burst into discussions. Oh my God! Isn't this illusory weapon mystic formation too powerful? Even Jiang Baiyu can't break through it? If even the top 10 geniuses can't break through it, then who can get the empty spot? Haha, whoever can break through the array is definitely a genius more powerful than Jiang Baiyu. This kind of genius would have already passed the entrance test. Why would he need to break through the array? Chapter 69. At the edge of the square in the city, there was a 30-meter tall pagoda. 2 young men were standing on top of the pagoda, looking down at the crowd and the high platform in the square. The white-robed young man was Bai Wuchen, and the burly young man beside him was Hao Meng. They looked at the illusory weapon Xian formation on the high platform and heard the noise from the square. They couldn't help but smile. Bai Wuchen had a playful smile on his face and said indifferently, "Some frogs at the bottom of the well are too self-righteous. They think that they can impress us by passing the illusory weapon Xian formation and get the focus of the sect's training. How ridiculous." Hao Meng grinned and said with a smile, "Yes, the illusory weapon Xian formation is just a low-grade Xian formation. Although it's a little difficult, it's not a big deal. Even if that person passes the formation, he won't be valued by the sect. Bai Wuqian's smile deepened, and he said contemptuously, "What's more ridiculous is that the self-righteous frogs at the bottom of the well failed the formation." How ridiculous. Hao Meng said, "Senior brother Bai, it's reasonable for that person to fail the formation. Although the illusory weapon Xian formation is a low-grade Xian formation, only those in the mystic comprehending realm can break through it. Ordinary true energy realm people can't break through it. They can only think of other ways to break the formation." Bai Wuqian stopped sneering and murmured with a deep look in his eyes, "I don't know why senior sister used this formation to test them. Does she have other intentions?" Hao Meng hesitated and said with a grin, "Senior brother Bai, I think you're thinking too much. It's completely reasonable for senior sister to ask you to set up this formation. Our sky-bearing sect is the #1 sect in the Tianshan region. How can any mediocre person enter? That place is temporarily vacant. If anyone wants to get it, they have to pay a higher price," Hao Meng was explaining when he suddenly saw a young man in a black robe walking out of the crowd in the square and stepping onto the high platform. He stared at the young man in the black robe and frowned. He said subconsciously, "Hey, isn't that the kid with the surname Ji? So many people have failed to break through the array before, and he still dares to step onto the stage?" Bai Wuqian stared coldly at Ji Tianqing's silhouette. His lips curled into a mocking smile. He, eldest senior sister was merciful and helped that brat twice. Could it be that he still thinks that eldest senior sister will remember an aunt like him and help him again? That illusory weapon profound formation was personally arranged by me. I don't believe that you can break through it. Hao Meng tilted his head and glanced at Bai Wuqian. He had a feeling that senior brother Bai was hostile towards that young man with the surname Ji. He wanted to remind Bai Wuqian, but after a moment of hesitation, he dismissed the idea. Ji Tianqing walked out of the crowd expressionlessly and climbed up the stairs to the stage. When the martial artists around the high platform saw him, they immediately showed expressions of surprise, contempt, and disdain. Many people rejoiced in the misfortune of others. They began to discuss eccentrically and even burst into laughter. "Oh, isn't this the young master of the Ji family? He's here to break through the array too. Last month, the useless Ji family failed the entrance test. Looks like he's not satisfied and wants to fight for the vacant spot. Tsk, even a genius like Jiang Baiyu failed. A useless body refinement realm cultivator wants to break through the array? He must be dreaming. Is he out of his mind? Doesn't Ji Tianqing think that he hasn't embarrassed himself enough? Previously, he was humiliated in the entrance test and became known as a useless person. Now, he's here to embarrass himself again. This is going to be a good show. Let's see how pathetic and miserable his injuries are later. I bet that Ji Tianqing will be ejected from the array in less than 10 breaths of time." Only a few people knew that Ji Tianqing had recovered his true energy realm strength. Most of the people present still thought that he was a useless body refinement realm cultivator from last month. Therefore, everyone was rejoicing in his misfortune and talking about him without restraint, mocking him for overestimating himself. Ji Tianqing ignored everyone's discussion and ridicule. He stepped through the black door expressionlessly and entered the illusory weapon mystic array. Swoosh! A golden light flashed. Ji Tianqing entered the array and seemed to have arrived at a dark space. This space was like a spacious hall, surrounded by dark golden walls of light. The squarish black stone floor was at least 100 meters long and wide. The floor was paved with thousands of stone slabs. They were arranged horizontally and vertically, like a huge chessboard. On this huge chessboard, there were 16 chess pieces moving back and forth. Those chess pieces were humanoid puppets made of bronze. All of them were wearing armor and holding swords and weapons. They looked lifelike. The 16 bronze puppets were 2 meters tall. They were strong and sturdy, like brave warriors on the battlefield. They were emitting a cold murderous aura. The weapons in their hands were different. There was a palm-sized black heavy sword, a fierce and domineering zanmadeo, a 9-section whip full of barbs, a long spear, a heavy halberd, and a meteor hammer. Just by looking at their appearance, people could feel the iron-blooded murderous aura. They were shrouded in invisible pressure. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that those bronze puppets were not only powerful and destructive, but also invulnerable. Fortunately, those bronze puppets only moved back and forth in the chessboard and did not attack him. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to break through the array. He looked at the bronze puppets and observed the dark golden light walls around him, looking for the exit of the array. Generally speaking, this kind of array used as an assessment would leave an exit. The challenger only needed to pass the test and break through the blockade of the 16 puppets to reach the exit and successfully break through this array. However, even after Ji Tianqing looked around, he still could not find the exit of the formation. The surroundings were blocked by the dark golden light walls, and there was not even a crack. This illusory weapon Xian formation has no exit. Do I have to break the array to get out? Ji Tianqing thought for a while, then he stepped into the black chessboard and walked forward. The two bronze puppets closest to him kept moving back and forth on his left and right. When he was 5 meters away from the two puppets, they immediately sped up and rushed toward him, waving the long spear and the zanmadeo to attack him. Swish! Swish! The long spear and the fierce zanmadeo slashed toward him at an extremely fast speed, making an ear-piercing sound. Ji Tianqing wanted to rush over with the fastest speed and not fight with the two puppets. But he did not expect that the two puppets were so fast that they rushed to him in an instant. The long spear and the zanmadeo attacked him at the same time, making it difficult for him to resist, and there was nowhere to hide. Bang! He tried his best to avoid the zanmadeo, but his abdomen was swept by the long spear, and he was knocked back on the spot. He fell to the ground 5 meters away, making a muffled plop sound. At this time, the two bronze puppets stopped attacking and did not chase him. The two puppets looked at each other, then turned back and continued to walk back and forth in the chessboard. Ji Tianqing covered his abdomen and got up. He endured the piercing pain and carefully observed the bronze puppets. The test just now made him understand one thing. If he wanted to break through this illusory weapon Xian formation, he must find a way to break through it. No matter how strong a warrior of the true element realm was, he could never be a match for the bronze puppets. Chapter 70. Ji Tianqing had dabbled in formations since he was young, so he was not unfamiliar with them. The Ji family was a family of blacksmiths, so they would use formations in the weapons and equipment they forged. When Ji Tianqing broke into the family's forbidden area, he had seen the formation set up by the Ji family's ancestor with his own eyes. Thus, he had some experience in setting up formations and breaking them. He stood at the edge of the formation and calmly observed the ground and the 16 bronze puppets, looking for a way to break the formation. The ground was paved with thousands of black stone slabs. It was flat and neat, and he could not see any abnormalities. He could not see any clues from this chessboard-like ground for the time being, so he focused all his attention on the bronze puppets. He carefully observed for a while and found some patterns. The 16 bronze puppets had similar appearances, but the weapons in their hands were different. Moreover, their attack range was 5 meters. As long as he stepped into this range, he would be attacked. They walked back and forth on the chessboard. Although it looked disorderly, there was actually some kind of pattern hidden within. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing found that there was a bronze heart-protecting mirror on the chest of each bronze puppet. There was a word engraved on each heart-protecting mirror. Some were engraved with gold, some with wood, and some with water, fire, and earth. Other than the words metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, there were also a few puppets with heaven, earth, and man engraved on their heart-protecting mirrors. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and pondered seriously. He vaguely felt that the words on the heart-protecting mirrors might be the key to breaking the formation. Heaven, earth, man, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, a total of 8 words. There are 16 bronze puppets here, and every 2 puppets have the same word. Could there be a mystery behind this? Thus, Ji Tianqing focused on observing the paths of the bronze puppets. Not long after, he found an interesting phenomenon. A bronze puppet with the word gold on its chest was aimlessly walking on the chessboard. A puppet with the word heaven on its chest was walking towards it. It brushed past the puppet with the word gold and continued walking. However, when that gold puppet encountered another gold puppet, the 2 of them actually turned around and walked away at the same time. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown and ponder silently. Gold and heaven have nothing to do with each other, so when these 2 puppets brushed past each other, there was no reaction at all. However, 2 golden character puppets would not meet each other. Instead, they would turn around and leave after meeting each other. Could it be that puppets with the same name cannot stay together? With this thought in mind, he stared at the puppets and continued to observe. It wasn't long before that heaven puppet encountered another heaven puppet. In the end, just as Ji Tianqing had guessed, the 2 heaven puppets immediately turned around and walked back when they were about to meet. This discovery shook his spirits, and he revealed a playful smile. So that's how it is. There is indeed a pattern. I just don't know what will happen if 2 puppets with the same name meet. Ji Tianqing was somewhat eager to give it a try. He stepped into the formation again and rushed forward. At this moment, the bronze puppet on the left was walking towards the center, and the distance between them was rapidly closing. On the breastplate of this bronze puppet, there was the word water. When Ji Tianqing had rushed 8 meters away, he was just 5 meters away from it. That bronze puppet immediately sped up and rushed over, brandishing its spear and thrusting it towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! The thrusting spear was extremely powerful, and its speed was unbelievably fast. It actually produced a sharp sound as it pierced through the air. Ji Tianqing didn't bother with it at all, and continued to rush forward without stopping at all. That water puppet immediately chased after him. Its pair of bronze feet stepped on the stone floor, producing muffled peng-peng-peng sounds. Although Ji Tianqing was running away with all his might, avoiding the pursuit of the water puppet, his eyes were fixed on the other hand. However, his eyes were fixed on another puppet not far away. There was also the word water on that puppet's heart-protecting mirror. He just wanted to take a risk and see what would happen if the 2 puppets with the same word bumped into each other. Seeing that the water puppet behind him was about to catch up to him, it brandished its spear and thrusted it towards him again. At this critical juncture, he burst forth with all his strength to escape, and rushed straight towards the water puppet in front of him. When he was only 5 meters away from that water puppet, that puppet also sped up and rushed over, brandishing its huge meteor hammer to launch an attack. Ji Tianqing was pincered by the 2 water puppets, and immediately fell into a dangerous situation. The slightest carelessness would cause him to be seriously injured. However, the 2 puppets were still 10 meters away from each other, and he still couldn't dodge. His expression became grave, and he instantly made up his mind. Sword driving technique. He activated 4 flashes of sword chi, and formed a sword art with both hands to control the sword chi. He condensed a sword net of flowing light to protect himself. Thump, thump, thump. Amidst the heavy footsteps, the 2 water puppets fiercely rushed over, raising their spears and meteor hammers high up, and smashing them down towards him. At this moment, the 2 water puppets were still 6 meters away from each other. The spears and meteor hammers smashed down at the same time, and fiercely hit the flowing light sword net. Ding ding ding. A series of crisp sounds of metal clashing burst out. The flowing light sword net was smashed into pieces, and the sword chi burst out in all directions. Ji Tianqing saw that the two puppets were only 4 meters away from each other, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. Now! He shouted in his heart, and immediately jumped 3 meters away, dodging the spears and meteor hammers by a hair's breadth. Bang! The two water puppets were charging at such a fast speed that they couldn't stop. They immediately collided with each other, and a muffled sound burst out. Then, a surprising scene appeared. After the two water puppets collided, they weren't repelled by the rebounding force, but actually disappeared at the same time. Ji Tianqing fell on the ground 3 meters away, and stared at this unbelievable scene with his eyes wide open. Instantly, a smile appeared on his face. After the two water puppets with the same name collided, they actually disappeared at the same time. I see. This is the way to break the illusory weapon Xian formation. He was excited, and said to himself with a heart full of excitement. At the same time, another two bronze puppets approached him, and broke through the 5-meter attack range. Those two bronze puppets suddenly sped up, and waved their heavy sword and halberd to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had found the way to break the formation, so of course he wasn't afraid of the siege of those two puppets. He saw that the fire and earth characters were engraved on the heart protection mirrors of those two puppets. Thus, he found another puppet with the word earth on it and rushed over as fast as he could. After a short while, the two puppets caught up with him, and launched an extremely violent attack. The other earth puppet was also alarmed, and quickly rushed over. Ji Tianqing was trapped in the siege of 3 puppets, but he didn't panic. He repeated the same trick, and skillfully closed the distance between the two earth puppets. Then, with a muffled sound, the two earth puppets collided with each other, and disappeared on the spot. Another 5 chapters, please bookmark, recommend tickets, and reward. Chapter 71. Ji Tianqing had mastered the method of breaking the formation, so he confidently shuttled back and forth in the formation. He was chased by several bronze puppets, and under the perilous situation, he was almost heavily injured several times. But he kept adjusting the direction of his escape, deliberately making the puppets with the same characters charge at him head-on. Moreover, he could always avoid the fatal attack at the most critical moment, and make 2 puppets with the same characters collide with each other and then disappear at the same time. 2 puppets with the character of water disappeared, and so did 2 puppets with the character of earth. Then, 2 puppets with the character of fire disappeared. As time went by, pairs of puppets disappeared one after another, and there were fewer and fewer bronze puppets in the formation. After about a quarter of an hour, there was only 1 pair of puppets left in the illusory weapon formation. Ji Tianqing ran on the chessboard with all his strength, constantly adjusting the direction of his escape, making the 2 bronze puppets attack him from the front and back. When the 2 bronze puppets rushed at him one after another, he finally showed a smile on his face. When he was about to be hit by the 2 puppets, he jumped up more than 3 meters high in a flash. Before the 2 bronze puppets could react, they collided head-on with each other. Swish! The last 2 bronze puppets disappeared at the same time. At the same time, the black stone ground under Ji Tianqing's feet disappeared and turned into white jade stone. The dark golden light wall around him also disappeared, revealing the blue sky, the golden sunlight, and the crowd around the high platform. Swish! The whole illusory weapon formation disappeared. Ji Tianqing stood on the high platform with a calm face, and his figure was proud. Originally, the high platform was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone was talking about Ji Tianqing breaking into the formation. Almost everyone was taking pleasure in his misfortune and laughing at him. Most people believed that Ji Tianqing, a trash in the body refining realm, could never break through the illusory weapon formation. But when everyone was talking, the illusory weapon formation suddenly disappeared, and Ji Tianqing appeared in front of everyone intact. At that moment, the crowd around the high platform suddenly became silent. Everyone was stunned, revealing an inconceivable expression, and staring at Ji Tianqing with their eyes wide open. Before this, everyone had made all sorts of guesses. They guessed that Ji Tianqing would be ejected from the array and be severely injured. His body would be covered in blood, and he might even lose his life. However, what no one expected was that Ji Tianqing appeared unscathed, but the illusory weapon Xian formation disappeared. Tens of thousands of warriors looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their bodies stiffened as if they had been petrified. After everyone came back to their senses, they burst into earth-shattering discussions and cries of shock. Oh my God! Am I seeing things? The illusory weapon profound formation disappeared? Could it have been cracked? Even the genius Jiang Baiyu couldn't break through the mystic grade array, but it was actually broken by Ji Tianqing? How is this possible? Isn't he a trash in the body refinement realm? How is it possible to break this formation? There must be something wrong. I don't believe this is true. Unbelievable. Could it be that Ji Tianqing has recovered his strength? In the crowded square, similar cries of surprise could be heard everywhere. Those who witnessed this scene couldn't believe this result. 1 month ago, in the same square in the city, on this high platform, Ji Tianqing accepted the strength test while he was unconscious. At that time, he was only at the 3rd level of the body refinement realm. He became the laughing stock of the world and was labeled as trash. This matter spread throughout the royal Azure Kingdom overnight. Today, 1 month later, on this high platform, Ji Tianqing had cracked the great array that even Jiang Baiyu couldn't break through in front of everyone. Many people present had witnessed what happened 1 month ago. They had seen Ji Tianqing become a trash with their own eyes. Because of this, they couldn't accept this result. They couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had recovered his strength and returned to the peak in just 1 month. Ji Tianqing stood on the high platform and looked down at the crowd. Looking at the shocked and incredulous faces, the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. His heart was also surging with emotions, excitement. I, Ji Tianqing, am back. He roared in his heart, full of confidence and lofty sentiments. At this moment, he only felt that the humiliation and criticism that he had endured for the past month had all disappeared. The title of trash was washed away by him in front of nearly 10,000 people. However, this is just the beginning. In the entrance competition 2 days later, I will make everyone's eyeballs fall out. Ji Tianqing thought in his heart as a sneer flashed across his eyes. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a green robe walked up to the high platform and came to his side. This person was at the mystic comprehending realm and had a dignified aura. He was the deacon of the Sky Pillar sect. He looked at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious tone, Ji Tianqing, you have successfully cracked the illusory weapon mystic formation and obtained the vacant quota. Remember to come here to participate in the entrance competition 2 days later. Ji Tianqing immediately cupped his fists and bowed to the middle-aged deacon. Understood. Thank you, deacon. The middle-aged deacon nodded and turned to walk down the high platform. Ji Tianqing also walked down the high platform, passed through the crowd in the square, and returned to the Ji mansion in a carriage. The 10,000 people in the square had yet to disperse. They discussed for a long time in groups of 3 to 5 before their excited mood slowly calmed down. Immediately after, the news of Ji Tianqing successfully cracking the illusory weapon mystic formation and obtaining the qualification for the entrance competition spread like the wind. In just half a day, this news spread throughout the imperial city of Green Cloud. All the martial artists in the city finally understood that Ji Tianqing was no longer the trash that was ridiculed by everyone. He actually recovered his strength in just a month and even surpassed the genius Jiang Baiyu. Of course, after this news spread, the most depressed person was Jiang Baiyu. Back then, Ji Tianqing was the #1 genius in the imperial city. He was suppressed by Ji Tianqing's fame and could not stand out. Today, he failed to break through the illusory weapon mystic formation, but Ji Tianqing successfully cracked the formation. When people spread the news, they would compare him with Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stepped on him again and cleared his name of trash. Jiang Baiyu was used as a stepping stone by him and was secretly ridiculed by countless martial artists. How could he not be angry from embarrassment? In the Spirit Fire Palace, in a certain luxurious room, young Prince Ji Ling was wearing a white long robe and was sitting cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed. Suddenly, an old man in black clothes quickly walked into the room and reported with cupped fists. Reporting to young Prince, I just received news that Ji Tianqing cracked the illusory weapon mystic formation in front of everyone in the city square and obtained the qualification to participate in the entrance competition. Ji Ling slowly opened his eyes and listened to the old man in black's report. He couldn't help but curl his lips and a cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. I already knew that he recovered his strength and is not weaker than the 5th level of the true element realm. He cracked the formation in front of everyone and obtained the qualification to participate in the entrance competition. This is exactly what I wanted. Otherwise, if he didn't participate in the entrance competition, would have to find another opportunity to make a move on him. After a pause, he sneered and said, I have already completely refined the God-seizing pearl, and my strength has also reached the peak. In the entrance competition 2 days later, I will take Ji Tianqing's dog life. 5 updates a day. I only ask for your support and recommendation tickets. Little he thanks everyone. Chapter 72. After returning to the Ji mansion, Ji Tianqing made a trip to his father's residence. His father was still recuperating in the secret chamber. Although his injuries were getting better, the recovery was very slow. He didn't wake up his father who was recuperating. Instead, he gave a few instructions to the guards guarding the secret chamber and left. After returning to Qingfeng courtyard, he entered the secret chamber and prepared to continue cultivating. There were still 2 days before the tournament. He wanted to use these last 2 days to increase his strength by a few %. The elixirs stored in the secret chamber, as well as the elixirs given to him by little Princess Ku, were all consumed and refined by him. For 2 whole days, he stayed in the secret chamber and cultivated bitterly. He only came out once. This time, he only appeared for an hour. During this time, he ate some food to replenish his strength. He also asked Mu Shan for some information and made some arrangements. In these 2 days, the Ji mansion was peaceful. Second Elder Ji Rufeng was surprisingly calm. He didn't make any movements as if he didn't feel any danger. The few managers who were under house arrest were also calm. They ate, drank, and slept leisurely as if nothing had happened. Even Ji Hao stayed in his room and cultivated. He didn't show his face. But in reality, they were all waiting for the Sky Pillar Sect's tournament to begin. Because they all knew that the day the tournament began would be the day Ji Tianqing died. The imperial city of Green Cloud was the complete opposite of the Ji mansion's tranquility. These 2 days, it was very lively and noisy. On one hand, the Sky Pillar Sect's tournament was about to begin. The grand event that happened once every 3 years was about to begin. It attracted countless cultivators to come to the imperial city to watch. On the other hand, the news of Ji Tianqing recovering his strength and participating in the tournament caused a lot of discussion among the commoners in the imperial city. Countless people were waiting for the tournament to begin. They wanted to see Ji Tianqing's performance in the tournament with their own eyes. Everyone wanted to see if the trash from back then had really recovered his strength. Could he wash away the shame in the tournament, clear his name, and obtain the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect? Everyone was looking forward to it. 2 days had passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing finally ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. At this time, his appearance didn't change, but his strength had increased by 40%. His entire body faintly emitted a powerful aura, and his eyes revealed a strong sense of confidence and anticipation. Under Huan's service, he changed into a set of black clothes with silver line patterns. His entire person became heroic and exuberant. He held the black dragon sword wrapped in the black iron scabbard and calmly walked out of the Ji mansion. He rode a carriage to the city square. At this time, the sun had just risen, and the warm morning breeze was blowing, making people feel comfortable. Countless commoners of the imperial city flocked to the city square, wanting to catch a glimpse of the Sky Pillar sect's disciples and the heroic bearing of the top 10 geniuses of the royal Azure Kingdom. After passing through several crowded streets, the carriage stopped at the edge of the square. The square, with a radius of nearly 3,000 meters, was already packed with people. Most of them were commoners and martial warriors from the imperial city. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked around. There were people everywhere. Roughly estimating that there were at least 30 to 50,000 people gathered in the square. Today, the number of people who came to the square to watch the grand competition was several times more than when he broke the array. Ji Tianqing passed through the crowd and walked towards the high platform in the middle of the square. Today's grand competition would be presided over by 2 deacons of the Sky Pillar sect. 3 Sky Pillar sect disciples would also be present to supervise. The grand competition's arena was the white jade high platform in the middle of the square. When Ji Tianqing squeezed out of the crowd and arrived below the high platform, he saw that there were more than 20 young martial warriors standing around the high platform. These 20 over people were all young martial warriors who had passed the test and would be participating in the grand competition today. Most of them were famous geniuses in the royal Azure Kingdom. They each stood around the high platform, leaving an empty space of 10 feet around them. No one dared to get close to them. Ji Tianqing also stood on the stone steps below the high platform, waiting with a calm expression. Some of the commoners and warriors who were watching immediately recognized him and started whispering to each other with strange expressions on their faces. In the blink of an eye, the crowd around him also retreated, leaving an empty space. Apart from the crowd's whispers, the 20 over young martial warriors also looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated gazes. Some of them were sizing him up, some of them were vigilant and alert, and some of them were indifferent. Among them, there was one gaze that was the most dazzling. It contained dense hostility and killing intent, making Ji Tianqing feel as if there was a thorn in his back. He followed that gaze and saw Jiang Baiyu, who was dressed in a white robe, staring at him with a gloomy expression. He was probably ridiculed by the entire city for the past 2 days, so he's bearing a grudge against me. Ji Tianqing sneered in his heart and retracted his gaze. He couldn't be bothered with Jiang Baiyu. After a while, more and more people gathered in the square. The young martial warriors participating in the grand competition were almost all here. Little Princess Cuckoo was also one of the geniuses who had passed the test and was going to participate in the grand competition. Under the protection of the palace guards, she passed through the crowd and arrived below the high platform. She looked around and hurried over when she saw Ji Tianqing. The little princess came to Ji Tianqing's side and whispered angrily, "Big brother Tianqing, you despicable guy." After saying that, she pouted angrily and glared at Ji Tianqing with her big eyes, showing that she was very dissatisfied. Ji Tianqing's expression was a little awkward. He smiled embarrassedly and asked, "Cuckoo, what's wrong? Are you unhappy?" "Humph. Of course I'm unhappy." The little princess glared at him angrily again and muttered angrily, "Some big liar secretly recovered his strength," but he refused to tell this princess. He made this princess worry about him all day, racking my brains to think of a solution for him. "Humph, despicable." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed an apologetic smile. He looked at her sincerely and said, "Cuckoo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide this from you. I have my own difficulties." You should also know that a lot of unforeseen events have happened in the Ji family during this time." Before he finished speaking, the anger on the little princess's face completely dissipated. Her big clear eyes stared at Ji Tianqing. Seeing his guilty and sincere expression, she revealed a flower-like smile. She nodded repeatedly and said, "Okay, okay, big brother Tianqing, you don't need to explain. I understand. I know you were forced to hide the news, but you still treat me as a friend, right?" Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded, "Of course. Cuckoo, you're my best friend. Hee hee. I knew big brother Tianqing was the best to me." The little princess revealed a sweet smile, looking even more charming and cute. She clenched her white and tender little fist and said to Ji Tianqing, "Big brother Tianqing, today we have to kill our way into the top 10 and win the qualifications to enter the Sky-bearing sect. When the time comes, the two of us will enter the Sky-bearing sect at the same time. We can accompany each other day and night, cultivate martial arts together, and take care of each other." As she spoke, the little princess's big clear eyes revealed a look of strong expectation. Chapter 73. Not long after, young Prince Ji Ling arrived below the high platform. The 40 young cultivators participating in the tournament were all present. 2 middle-aged men in green robes walked up the high platform. These 2 men had an extraordinary aura and a noble status. They were the Sky Pillar sect's 2 deacons in green robes who were in charge of presiding over today's tournament. After ascending the stage, the tall and burly middle-aged deacon spoke first. "Everyone, I am the Sky Pillar sect's External Affairs Deacon, Han Xiaofan. I will be the host of this tournament. In this year's Grand Entrance Tournament, there will be 40 young martial artists from the Royal Azure Cloud Kingdom who will participate in the arena battles. The top 10 martial artists who emerge victorious will have the qualifications to enter our school." Han Xiaofang's expression was dignified as he introduced the meaning of this tournament and the simple rules and procedures. After that, he pointed to the thin middle-aged man beside him and introduced, "This is our sect's External Affairs Deacon, Yang Kailan. Next, let's invite Deacon Yang to introduce the rules of the tournament." Yang Kailan was a middle-aged man with a thin face and dark skin. His eyes flashed with a sharp light from time to time. He said in a deep voice, "In this tournament, the 40 cultivators participating in the tournament will be drawn by Deacon Han in front of everyone to determine the order of battle. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. There is only one chance. The tournament is limited to 15 minutes. Please cherish this opportunity and do your best. There are no restrictions on the methods used in the tournament. Disability is not prohibited, but external forces and assistance are not allowed." Yang Kailan's voice was not loud, but it was full of energy and clearly spread to every corner of the square. After explaining the rules of the tournament, he pointed to a tall tower at the edge of the square and said in a solemn voice, "Today, I and Deacon Han will jointly preside over the tournament. The 3 genius disciples of our sect are also present to supervise. They will definitely ensure the fairness of the tournament." Hearing his words, the tens of thousands of people in the square all turned their heads and looked at the tower that was more than 10 feet tall. They saw 3 young men and women standing at the top of the tower. Standing in the middle was a peerless beauty wearing a plain white dress. It was Yun Yao. The 2 young men beside Yun Yao were by Wuchen and Hao Meng. The 3 of them stood proudly at the top of the tower. Their clothes fluttered in the wind, but their bodies were as tall and straight as pine trees. They had a noble aura. In an instant, the tens of thousands of people and cultivators in the square were attracted by the 3's heroic appearance. They revealed deep admiration and worship. A moment later, Han Xiaosheng announced that the large competition was about to begin. Only then did the people in the square withdraw their shocked and admiring gazes. Han Xiaosheng, he took out 40 jade lots and waved his hand. The numerous jade slips turned into green flowing lights, intertwining with each other as they danced in the air. Each jade stick had the name of a young martial artist. Han Xiaofan would divide the 40 jade sticks into 20 pairs at random. The martial artists corresponding to each pair of jade lots would have to ascend the high platform and fight to determine the victor. Ko. Hearing her name, the little princess was stunned for a moment. She muttered in a low voice, "I was actually chosen for the first battle." Ji Tianqing patted her shoulder and smiled encouragingly. "Ko, don't worry. I believe you'll be fine." "Yes, I will do my best." The little princess waved her little fist, her face full of determination. At this time, Han Xiaofan once again took out a pair of jade lots and read aloud, "The second match, Wei Lingfeng vs Sun Kaixian." Next, he picked up pairs of jade lots and read out the names of many young martial artists. The third match, Fan Jianren vs He Shanming. The fourth match, Jiang Baiyu vs Sun Wuming. The fifth round, when Han Xiaofan finished reading the results of the 20 lots, he loudly announced the start of the large competition. The two deacons stepped down from the high platform and stood below the platform to watch the battle. A handsome young man ascended the high platform and stood with a sword in his hand. This person's name was Pei Anyu. He was a young genius from the Swallow State who had reached the 4th level of the true energy realm at the age of 17. His expression was calm as he stood on the stage. His gaze fell on the little princess, Ji Ku. The little princess waved her hand at Ji Tianqing and hurriedly ascended the arena with her sword. Although she was only 15 years old, her martial arts talent was extraordinary and she was at the 4th level of the true energy realm. Moreover, she had mentioned to Ji Tianqing that she had reached the peak of the 4th level of the true energy realm and could break through to the 5th level of the true energy realm at any time. This was the first battle of the large competition, so Pei Anyu and the little princess were very cautious. The two of them faced each other for 10 breaths of time, but neither of them had the intention to attack first. The countless spectators below the stage could not help but shout in unison, urging the two of them to make a move quickly. Therefore, Pei Anyu cupped his hands at the little princess and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, I'm sorry to offend you." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled out his sword with a clang and stabbed it at the little princess as fast as the wind. The little princess was already prepared and did not hesitate to pull out her sword to counterattack, sending out a few dazzling sword lights. Clang! 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 The two of them separated in an instant, and when they brushed past each other, they exchanged 2 moves in an instant. The little princess's strength was indeed superior, and she cut a hole in Pei Anyu's robe. The spectators below the stage immediately burst into exclamations, and many people began to discuss loudly. Pei Anyu's face darkened, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He did not dare to hold back anymore. After a low shout, he waved his sword at the little princess with all his strength. Clang! 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 The two of them fought again, and their figures flashed and moved around the arena, sending out dazzling sword lights. For a moment, the arena was filled with sword chi, and a fierce wind blew. The two of them fought fiercely, and it was difficult to determine the winner after dozens of moves. Countless spectators cheered and were intoxicated by the fight. However, the little prince, Ji Ling, was like the other top geniuses. He did not even bother to watch the fight on the arena. He secretly stared at Ji Tianqing, and a cold smile flashed in his eyes. Humph! I'll let you live a little longer. Not long after, this prince will make you suffer a crushing defeat in front of everyone, and then send you to the Western Paradise with a sword. I wonder how you will feel when you are defeated by your lifetime of cultivation. Unknowingly, 100 breaths of time passed. The little princess and Pei Anyu fought fiercely for more than 50 moves, and the victor was finally decided. The little princess was hit 3 times, and dark red blood gushed out from her wounds, staining her light yellow dress with bloodstains. Fortunately, she did not injure any vital parts, and it did not affect the rest of the fight. Pei Anyu's injuries were much more severe. He was hit more than 20 times, and his robe was dyed red. Under the heavy injuries, he could no longer hold on, and the treasure sword in his hand was sent flying by the little princess's sword. He could only unwillingly admit defeat. Seeing Pei Anyu admit defeat in front of everyone, Deacon Han Xiusheng announced the result loudly. The first round, Pei Anyu loses, and Ji Ku advances. The crowd in the square burst into cheers, and a torrential discussion sounded out. Pei Anyu left the stage in a sorry state. The little princess stood proudly on the high platform, revealing a face full of smiles, enjoying the cheers and praises of the crowd. A moment later, the little princess also walked down the arena and returned to Ji Tianqing's side. Ji Tianqing hurriedly helped her bandage her wounds, and let her consume a pill to recover her true essence. Chapter 74. Following this, the second match began. A handsome black-robed youth and a youth wearing fiery red armor walked onto the stage at the same time. That handsome black-robed youth was precisely one of the black and white heroes, Wei Lingfeng, a genius ranked in the top 10 of the Azure Cloud Kingdom. And that youth martial artist wearing fiery red armor was a young master of some influential family in the Imperial City. Although this person had the strength of the third level of the True Element realm and also had some fame in the Imperial City, he was absolutely not Wei Lingfeng's match. After all, Wei Lingfeng's strength reached the 5th level of the True Element realm. The tens of thousands of spectators in the plaza had all heard of Wei Lingfeng's name before and knew his strength. Therefore, no one was optimistic about that youth wearing fiery red armor called Sun Kaixian. Seeing the two people each holding their treasured swords and confronting each other after ascending the stage, countless spectators started discussing. With Wei Lingfeng's strength, he doesn't need to fight at all and can definitely rank in the top 10. Yeah, Wei Lingfeng is a genius ranked in the top 10. Sun Kaixian is absolutely not his match. I reckon that Sun Kaixian can at most last 10 moves under Wei Lingfeng's hands and will be defeated. 10 moves? I think he'll be defeated in 6 moves. 5 moves. At most 5 moves. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, Sun Kaixian on the stage opened his mouth to speak. His expression was very ugly, and his tone was filled with helplessness as he said to Wei Lingfeng, "Brother Wei, forget it if we don't fight this match, I'm willing to admit defeat." Ho. Want to be a carp leaping over the dragon gate and enter the Sky Pillar sect as a disciple? It doesn't just rely on strength, it also relies on luck. No one would have thought that Sun Kaixian actually did not draw his sword to fight and directly admitted defeat. The crowd in the plaza immediately burst into an uproar. Countless people started discussing. Some people mocked Sun Kaixian for being cowardly and afraid to fight, actually directly admitting defeat without fighting. But some people felt that Sun Kaixian's action was wise. Rather than being defeated after exchanging a few moves, it was better to directly admit defeat. Furthermore, when everyone heard Sun Kaixian's words, they all understood his meaning. He also had the desire to enter the Sky Pillar sect and soar to the heavens in one bound. It was just that his luck was too bad, being drawn to fight with Wei Lingfeng. This was fate. Just as he said, wanting to be a carp leaping over the dragon gate to become a true dragon, not only relied on strength, it also required a certain amount of luck. Deacon Han Xiusheng loudly announced the results. Wei Lingfeng won, and Sun Kaixian was eliminated. The two of them left the ring respectively. The audience below the ring was still discussing endlessly. Next, the third battle began. 2 young martial artists stepped onto the arena and began to fight with murderous intent. One of the young men who used a saber was called Fan Jianren. This name brought him a lot of trouble, and he was often ridiculed and mocked by others. His opponents then made an issue out of it, mocking and insulting him without restraint in order to provoke him. The result was obvious. Fan Jianren lost his sense of propriety in his rage and was unable to display his full strength. Regretfully, he was defeated. Next, the fourth and fifth matches were carried out in order. Pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring one after another. After a fierce battle, the outcome was decided amidst the discussions and cheers of tens of thousands of spectators. The loser was miserably eliminated and left the stage dejectedly. The winner would advance to the next round and enjoy the cheers and praises of countless people. 2 hours passed. During this period, a total of 14 pairs of martial artists went up the stage to fight, and 7 of them were eliminated. Among the 7 that successfully advanced were top geniuses like Jiang Baiyu and Jian Wuxiang. Finally, the 15th battle began, and it was Ji Tianqing's turn to enter the ring. His opponent was a young martial artist at the 4th level of the True Element realm called Wan Silan. This person was the young master of the imperial city's influential Wan clan. In the past, he had become enemies with Ji Tianqing, and there were grievances between them. Wan Silan was the first to jump onto the ring. Standing on the high platform, he sneered at Ji Tianqing and even hooked his finger in ridicule. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes as he walked onto the ring with the black dragon sword in hand. Instantly, the gazes of tens of thousands of spectators gathered on Ji Tianqing, and they started to discuss enthusiastically with complicated expressions. Ji Tianqing has finally entered the ring. This is his first battle. Although this fellow has recovered to the True Element realm, I don't know what level he is at. Can he defeat Wan Silan? In my opinion, no matter how fast Ji Tianqing's strength recovers, it is impossible for him to defeat Wan Silan, who is at the 4th level of the True Element realm. I heard that Wan Silan has a grudge with Ji Tianqing. Wan Silan will definitely defeat Ji Tianqing at all costs. Whether Ji Tianqing is a good-for-nothing or a genius who has recovered to the True Element realm will be revealed soon. On the stage, Wan Silan looked at Ji Tianqing with a cold smile. His tone was filled with ridicule as he said, "Ji Tianqing, back then, you slapped me 3 times in front of everyone in the gambling house. I will never forget this grudge. Today, I will beat you down in front of the entire city and make you beg for mercy. I will avenge my humiliation." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said in an indifferent tone, "Back then, you schemed against my Ji family's disciples and made them addicted to gambling. You even instigated them to steal 1,000,000 taels of silver to gamble. I am only giving you a small punishment. I have already given your Wan family a lot of face. You want me to beg for mercy? Maybe in your next life." Ji Tianqing curled his lips and revealed a contemptuous smile. Wan Silan's eyes were filled with rage. He shouted in a low voice, "Humph! Ji Tianqing, you are too arrogant. Everyone in the city is saying that you have recovered to the True Element realm. I would like to see how far you can recover in a short month. You good-for-nothing Ji want to turn the tables and wash away your humiliation? You must be dreaming." Wan Silan shouted angrily. He immediately drew his sword and attacked Ji Tianqing with all his might. Swish! 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 3 streaks of sharp sword light slashed towards Ji Tianqing's 3 vital points. We will know who is the good-for-nothing later. Ji Tianqing sneered, but he did not show any signs of drawing his sword. He used a mysterious footwork and his figure flickered. He easily dodged the 3 streaks of sword light. You are not drawing your sword? You are too arrogant. Wan Silan looked as if he had been greatly insulted. His eyes were filled with rage. He waved his sword again and 5 streaks of sword light enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing's figure flickered again and again. He easily dodged the sword light again and said expressionlessly, "You are not worthy for me to draw my sword." The martial artists around the ring were staring at the battle in the ring. Their nerves were tense. Seeing Wan Silan's fierce attacks and Ji Tianqing not drawing his sword, the crowd began to whisper to each other. At this moment, when the crowd heard Ji Tianqing's confident words, they burst into an uproar. Ji Tianqing is really arrogant. Humph. That guy is just putting on a brave front. If he is really so strong, why is he dodging and not fighting back? So what if he has recovered to the true element realm? He is still no match for Wan Silin. It seems that Ji Tianqing is only that capable. It is a fool's dream to think that he can get into the top 10 in the tournament. Chapter 75. In the arena, Wan Silin was enraged by Ji Tianqing's provocation. He did not hesitate to use all his strength and used his ultimate skill. He waved his sword and slashed out 8 rays of sword light. Gale 8 swords. 8 rays of dazzling sword light spread out. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew on the arena and rolled towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. His figure flashed 3 times and he was 10 meters away. Not only did he dodge Wan Silin's ultimate skill, but he also moved behind Wan Silin like a ghost. It's time to end this. Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. He suddenly raised his right hand and used his palm as a knife to slash at Wan Silin's neck. Wan Silin had just used his ultimate skill and was at his weakest point. Suddenly, he heard Ji Tianqing's voice from behind him. His face was filled with fear and shock. Before he could react, his neck was hit by Ji Tianqing's palm. Bam! In the muffled sound, Ji Tianqing's palm burst out with a powerful force. Wan Silin's eyes turned black and fainted on the spot. He kicked Wan Silin's back again, sending him flying out on the spot. Wan Silin fell off the stage in a sorry state. There was no doubt that Ji Tianqing had won. From the beginning to the end, he did not even use his weapon. He defeated Wan Silin, who was at the 4th level of the true energy realm, in just 3 moves. At that moment, the entire square was silent. Tens of thousands of people looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. They could not believe this result. After a while, the crowd in the square came back to their senses and burst into discussions. How is this possible? Ji Tianqing was still a trash in the body refining realm last month. In just 1 month, he recovered to the true energy realm. Not only did he break the illusory weapon Xian formation, but he also defeated Wan Silin in 3 moves. This is unbelievable. The most important thing is that Ji Tianqing did not even draw his sword. He didn't even use his weapon, yet he easily defeated Wan Silin. How strong is his true strength? The square was noisy. Those who were mocking Ji Tianqing determined that he couldn't defeat Wan Silin were so ashamed that their faces and ears turned red. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. At this moment, Han Xiaosheng loudly announced the result. Wan Si was defeated, and Ji Tianqing was victorious. Only then did Ji Tianqing calmly walk down the stage under the gazes of tens of thousands of people and return to the little princess's side. The little princess had seen him easily defeat Wan Silin with her own eyes. She was so excited that her little face was flushed red. She was agitated and excited. Big brother Tianqing, you're amazing. Ha ha ha. You didn't see the reaction of those bastards. They were all stunned and dumbfounded. Just now, they were laughing at you for overestimating yourself. Now, they are so ashamed that they want to die. Tianqing Gij, I knew you wouldn't be defeated. Ji Tianqing had won, but the little princess was even happier and more excited than him. Seeing her dancing with joy, Ji Tianqing revealed a gentle smile. Alright, Cuckoo, there's still the 2nd round of the competition later. Whether or not you can enter the sky-bearing sect will depend on the next round. You should hurry up and recover your true essence. Okay. The little princess nodded and quickly calmed down. She silently refined the medicinal power and recovered her true essence. Following that, a few more pairs of young martial artists ascended the ring and began to compete and fight. Although the martial artists who went up the stage were all at least at the second level of the true essence realm and fought with all their might, the battle was very intense. However, Ji Tianqing did not have much interest in the fighting on the stage. His eyes silently swept across the little prince, Jian Wuxian, and the black and white heroes. No one knew what he was thinking. Finally, the last battle of the first round began. The little prince, Ji Ling, walked up the stage with a confident smile on his face. He stood proudly on the stage. When the spectators in the square saw the little prince appear, they immediately cheered excitedly. Especially those young girls and girls, they all revealed deep admiration in their eyes and cheered for him without caring about their image. There was no other way. Ji Ling's reputation in the Clear Sky Kingdom was too resounding. He was recognized by the people as a benevolent and righteous gentleman who had both ability and integrity. Who knew how many young girls and young ladies regarded him as their dream lover and wanted to marry him? Ji Ling's opponent was called Pei Qianfan. He was a genius about 18 years old and had the strength of the third level of the true essence realm. Although Ji Ling's voice was extremely loud, tens of thousands of people in the square were cheering for him. However, Pei Qianfan's martial talent was extraordinary and he was young and frivolous. He would definitely not be afraid of battle. As everyone knew, Ji Ling's innate dantian was damaged and he was destined to be a weakling in the body refinement realm for the rest of his life. Half a month ago, he obtained the red star flower and repaired his damaged dantian, successfully reaching the true essence realm. However, only half a month had passed and he was at most at the second level of the true essence realm. It was impossible for him to reach the third level of the true essence realm. No matter how monstrous a person was, it was also impossible to rise 3 levels in half a month. This was common knowledge in the martial Tao. Pei Qianfan predicted this point. That was why he was fearless and confidently drew his sword to attack. "Young prince, sorry to offend you." Pei Qianfan gave a low cry and swung his sword, slashing out 4 sword lights. His body was as agile as a swallow as he pounced towards Ji Ling. Ji Ling was immediately enveloped by the sword light and was surrounded by danger. However, his expression did not change. A gentle and confident smile still hung on his lips. When the sword light arrived in front of him, a cold light flashed across his eyes before he suddenly drew his sword to counterattack. Clang! The treasured sword was unsheathed and gave off a crisp sword hum, lighting up with a dazzling sword light. Swoosh! The piercing cold sword light drew a strange trajectory in the air. With an unparalleled speed, it instantly defeated Pei Qianfan's 4 sword lights. The crowd only heard a light ding sound and saw the treasured sword in Pei Qianfan's hand was sent flying. The treasured sword drew an arc in the air and fell below the stage. At the same time, the treasured sword in Ji Ling's hand was also placed on Pei Qianfan's neck. Pei Qianfan's figure that was as swift as the wind also suddenly stiffened and stopped. The entire audience was silent. The tens of thousands of people in the plaza all opened their eyes wide in shock, revealing thick disbelief. All the discussions and cheers came to an abrupt end. Everyone was stunned. No one dared to believe that young Prince Ji Ling's strength was actually so formidable. He actually easily broke Pei Qianfan's sword move and instantly defeated Pei Qianfan. Pei Qianfan, who was at the third level of the true element realm, actually could not even block one of his sword. This was too shocking. Just how formidable was young Prince Ji Ling's strength? 4th level of the true element realm? Or 5th level? Or 6th level? Thinking up to here, countless people sucked in a cold breath, revealing fanatical worship. In the next instant, earth-shaking cheers and shouts erupted from the crowd. Countless people started discussing in high spirits. Young Prince Ji Ling's sword that seemed to be aided by a god deeply shocked everyone. The plaza was noisy to the extreme. Everyone was guessing Ji Ling's strength and realm. Only Ji Tianqing was expressionless. His eyes became more and more gloomy. Chapter 76. After Han Xiaosheng announced the results of the matches, the first round of the grand competition ended. Of the 40 young martial artists participating in the grand competition, 20 were eliminated, and the 20 who won successfully advanced. Han Xiaosheng ascended the stage once again and took out 20 jade lots, starting to draw lots to decide the second round of matches. Swish! 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 20 jade lots flew into the sky, transforming into streams of azure light, interweaving and dancing. Everyone looked up at that cluster of azure light, waiting for the results of the draw. To the martial artists participating in the second round of the competition, the results of the draw were abnormally important. This concerned whether they could enter the sky-bearing sect or not, and it concerned their fate. Finally, the 20 jade lots were randomly divided into 10 pairs, quietly floating in front of Han Xiaosheng. He took out 2 jade lots and announced the results of the draw loudly. First match, Jian Wuxia vs Qiu Yuanwu. Second match, Ji Ku vs Northmont Buluo. Third match, Wei Lingfeng vs Yin Jian. Fourth match, Ji Ling vs Wulong. Fifth match, Ji Tianqing vs Jiang Baiyu. Sixth match, Han Xiaosheng consecutively drew 10 pairs of jade lots and announced the order and opponents of the 20 martial artists. Every time he finished reading the names of a pair of martial artists, it would arouse a burst of discussion from the crowd in the plaza. And when he read the 5th pair of martial artists' names, the tens of thousands of people in the plaza all cried out in surprise. No one would have thought that Ji Tianqing would actually face off against Jiang Baiyu. This battle was extremely important. The loser would be eliminated, and the winner would enter the top 10 of the grand competition and successfully enter the sky-bearing sect as a disciple. This way, between Ji Tianqing and Jiang Baiyu, one would definitely be eliminated, and the other would enter the sky-bearing sect. This match was the battle of fate. Yet, Ji Tianqing and Jiang Baiyu, these two people, were the most discussed topics in the past 3 days. Jiang Baiyu failed to clear the formation, while Ji Tianqing successfully cleared the illusionary weapon Profound Formation. When the imperial city citizens discussed this matter, they would all mention Jiang Baiyu's name, using his failure to set off Ji Tianqing's success. Many people subconsciously felt that Ji Tianqing might be stronger than Jiang Baiyu. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to successfully break the formation. However, this was only everyone's guess. Ji Tianqing and Jiang Baiyu had never fought head-on before. And now, Han Xiaosheng's random drawing had tied the two of them together. The tens of thousands of people in the square were all thinking, could this be the will of the heavens? Was it destined that the two of them would have a fated battle? Soon, Han Xiaosheng announced the order and candidates for the 10 matches, and then loudly announced the start of the competition. The two young martial artists stepped into the ring and stood 10 meters away from each other. They were facing each other with murderous intent. One of the blue-robed young men was called Qiu Yuanwu. He was a sword Dao genius with some fame in the Clear Sky Kingdom. At such a young age, he already had the strength of the 4th level of the True Element realm. The other young man was dressed in black. His appearance was average, and there was a scar on his right cheek. This person was none other than Jian Wuxia, a cultivation maniac who was obsessed with swords. He had the strength of the 6th level of the True Element realm. In the past, he had always been suppressed by Ji Tianqing and could only be ranked 2nd in the Clear Sky Kingdom. Now, among the 20 young martial artists, he was the number 1 expert on the surface. Therefore, when Qiu Yuanwu found out that his opponent was Jian Wuxia, his heart was filled with helplessness and despair. The difference in strength between the two was 2 levels. The result of the battle was obvious. Jian Wuxia only used 5 moves and easily defeated Qiu Yuanwu. Han Xiaosheng announced the result of the battle on the spot. Jian Wuxiang successfully advanced to the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. Qiu Yuanwu was miserably eliminated. He could only walk down the ring with a heart full of regret. He left unwillingly. The second round of the competition began. The little princess's opponent was Beishan Boluo. He was the young master of the imperial city's Beishan aristocratic family and was also a young genius. He was also at the fourth level of the true element realm like the little princess. Their sword Dao attainments were very exquisite. However, the little princess unleashed her full strength in this battle and even used her trump card. The two fought for a quarter of an hour and exchanged over 100 moves before the outcome was decided. The little princess defeated Beishan Boluo at the cost of 7 sword strikes. She entered the top 10 and obtained the qualifications to enter the Sky Pillar sect. After Han Xiaoxing announced the result, the little princess walked down the ring with a pale face. She hurriedly bandaged her wounds and consumed medicinal pills to recover her true essence. The third battle was even more exciting. Wei Lingfeng, one of the black and white heroes, and his opponent, Yin Jian, both used their full strength and displayed incomparably exquisite sword techniques, causing the tens of thousands of spectators to cheer. In the end, Wei Lingfeng defeated his opponent and obtained victory, smoothly entering the top 10. When the fourth battle began, the little prince, Ji Ling, and Wu Long stepped onto the ring. Wu Long was a youth around 20 years old. His strength had reached the fourth level of the true element realm. As for Ji Ling's strength, it was still hard to unravel. The two of them only exchanged over 20 moves on the stage, and Ji Ling easily defeated Wu Long. The tens of thousands of people in the square cheered loudly for Ji Ling's victory. The crowd erupted into discussions. Everyone did not dare to believe that Ji Ling's strength actually rose to such a degree in a short half a month. He could even easily defeat a fourth-level true element realm martial artist. This was simply too inconceivable. Ji Tianqing had been observing Ji Ling and Wu Long's battle all along. He could tell that Ji Ling was concealing his strength and did not use his full strength at all. Ji Ling's true strength was extremely likely to have already reached the 7th level of the true element realm. If he attacked with all his might, he only needed 3 to 5 moves and could defeat Wu Long. This also made Ji Tianqing very certain that the God-seizing bead was definitely refined by Ji Ling. After all, the God-seizing bead seized his lifetime's cultivation. After Ji Ling completely refined the God-seizing bead, he could possess true element realm 7th level strength. Thinking up to here, Ji Tianqing clenched both fists tightly. A hint of icy-cold killing intent flashed across in his eyes. Ji Ling, oh, Ji Ling. The person who instigated Ling Yunfei to snatch the God-seizing bead was you. The person who saved Ling Yunfei at the Apricot Manor that night was also you. Turns out that you're the mastermind behind the scenes, the most despicable and sinister fellow. Very soon, the 5th match began. Ji Tianqing and Jiang Baiyu ascended the stage at the same time, each hugging a treasure sword and confronting each other on the stage. Ji Tianqing looked at Jiang Baiyu expressionlessly, his gaze cold. He did not have any enmity with Jiang Baiyu. Fighting on the stage today was also dictated by fate. But Jiang Baiyu glared at him with a cold smile on his face, his eyes surging with thick rage and killing intent. Ji Tianqing. Didn't expect that your opponent would actually be me, right? Fate is really miraculous. I really have to thank Deacon Han properly for letting you and me fight in front of everyone. Jiang Baiyu revealed a smug cold smile, his tone filled with anger. In these 3 days, you were in the limelight, while I became everyone's laughingstock. Ji Tianqing, do you know how much I hate you? Today, I'm going to defeat you fair and square in front of several tens of thousands of Imperial City's citizens. I want to let everyone see that I, Jiang Baiyu, am the true martial Dao genius. And you just barged through the grand array by luck. You're absolutely not my match. Chapter 77. Jiang Baiyu's voice clearly spread throughout more than half of the square, and the tens of thousands of imperial city citizens heard it clearly. A commotion broke out in the crowd, and many people were whispering to each other. In these 3 days, the most discussed people in the imperial city were Jiang Baiyu and Ji Tianqing. Jiang Baiyu had become Ji Tianqing's stepping stone to rise again. It was reasonable for him to be so angry and to harbor resentment toward Ji Tianqing. It was so much so that many of the cultivators in the square felt their blood boil from Jiang Baiyu's words. They also agreed with Jiang Baiyu's words and looked forward to the scene of Jiang Baiyu defeating Ji Tianqing in public. For a moment, cheers broke out in the crowd, and many people cheered for Jiang Baiyu. On the stage, Ji Tianqing's expression was still calm as usual. He looked at Jiang Baiyu indifferently, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a slight smile with a hint of ridicule. Jiang Baiyu, I sympathize with you. However, this might be your fate. Jiang Baiyu's expression became even more gloomy. He glared at him with a sharp gaze and shouted, Ji Tianqing, what do you mean by this? Ji Tianqing sneered mockingly. Back then, when I was the #1 genius in the imperial city, you were trampled under my feet and were not famous. 3 days ago, you failed to break through the formation, and I succeeded in breaking through the illusory armament mystic formation. It was your failure that caused the news of me recovering my strength to spread throughout the imperial city, causing a sensation. Today, you will still be defeated by me and have no chance to enter the Sky Pillar sect. No matter in the past or now, you are my stepping stone. This is your fate. Tell me, should I sympathize with you? Hearing this, the tens of thousands of people in the square were in an uproar. Everyone revealed complicated expressions and broke out into a torrential discussion. Oh my God! Ji Tianqing is actually so confident. Too arrogant. He's simply arrogant. The former #1 genius is back again, and he's still so confident and arrogant. If Ji Tianqing defeats Jiang Baiyu today, then Jiang Baiyu will really be like what he said, destined to be a stepping stone. How pitiful. The deafening sounds of discussion spread throughout the square. Jiang Baiyu was so angry that his face turned ashen. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling. His eyes emitted a strong killing intent. Ji Tianqing, you are too arrogant. I'll cripple you right now and let you know that trash will always be trash. The enraged Jiang Baiyu shouted angrily as he drew his sword and charged at Ji Tianqing. 8 golden snake swords. As soon as he made his move, he exerted all his strength and used his most exquisite sword technique. 8 golden sword lights pierced towards Ji Tianqing, attacking his vital points from all directions, enveloping his figure and leaving him with nowhere to hide. Ji Tianqing did not retreat. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He immediately activated the power of the sword embryo and displayed 6 flashes of sword chi. Swish! 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 The 8 golden sword lights were immediately broken and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Jiang Baiyu's expression changed. He pounced towards Ji Tianqing again and slashed out 8 sword lights. Golden Snake Wild Dance. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He held the black dragon sword in his left hand and performed the sword control art with his right hand, controlling the 6 flashes of sword chi to counterattack. Swish! 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 The 6 flashes of sword chi instantly split into 12 flashes of sword chi. They danced and intertwined rapidly, forming a sword net. The sword net blocked the 8 flashes of sword chi and enveloped Jiang Baiyu, killing him at lightning speed. Jiang Baiyu immediately fell into a perilous situation and was forced to retreat repeatedly by the sword net. In the blink of an eye, several wounds appeared on his body from the sword chi, and dark red blood flowed out. Damn it! What kind of sword technique is this? Jiang Baiyu was shocked and furious. He swung his sword in a flurry to block the sword net. Ji Tianqing was just 6 meters away from him. He used the sword control art to control the sword net to attack and closed in step by step. Jiang Baiyu did not have the strength to counterattack at all. He could not block the sword net's attack at all, let alone get close to Ji Tianqing. The tens of thousands of commoners in the square were also dumbfounded. Everyone revealed a horrified expression and erupted into disbelieving exclamations and discussions. Oh my God! What kind of sword technique is that? Why have I never heard of it before? This is too unbelievable. Ji Tianqing can actually control sword qi and form a sword net to attack. Is this something a true element realm martial artist can do? It is said that only origin core realm martial artists can control sword qi to attack from a distance, right? This kind of sword technique is simply unimaginable. Today is really an eye-opener. No wonder Ji Tianqing is so confident and arrogant and does not take Jiang Baiyu seriously. It turns out that he has mastered such a miraculous sword technique. He has the capital to be arrogant. Jiang Baiyu can't even break through that sword net. He can't even touch the corner of Ji Tianqing's clothes. How can he still fight? Sigh, Jiang Baiyu will lose for sure. Soon, 100 breaths of time passed. Jiang Baiyu's white robe was cut into threads by the sword qi and turned into a pile of rags. It was really not enough to cover his body. Moreover, he was covered in wounds all over. There were at least 60 wounds all over his body. Blood kept gushing out from his wounds, dyeing his white robe dark red. He had completely turned into a bloody man. Jiang Baiyu tried his best to break out of the encirclement and unleashed his full strength without caring about anything else, wanting to break through the sword net's blockade and strangulation. However, the sword net covered a radius of 3 meters. Under Ji Tianqing's control, it seemed to have intelligence and spirituality. Even if Jiang Baiyu could tear a gap in the sword net, Ji Tianqing would immediately control the sword qi to patch up the gap. In this way, Jiang Baiyu would never be able to escape from the sword net's strangulation. His injuries kept worsening. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and his strength was also rapidly depleting. After 10 breaths of time, the sword in Jiang Baiyu's hand was sent flying by the sword qi and fell far away from the arena. The sword net suddenly dissipated and turned back into 6 sword qi. They floated quietly beside him and pointed directly at his head and throat. Ji Tianqing looked at Jiang Baiyu and shouted in an indifferent tone, "Jiang Baiyu, this is your fate. Admit defeat." Jiang Baiyu, who was covered in blood and had a bloody face, stood on the arena in a daze. His body was on the verge of collapse. He could not accept this result. Until now, he still could not believe that he had lost to Ji Tianqing. Moreover, he had lost so miserably. At this moment, the pride and confidence in his heart had been shattered by Ji Tianqing. Put down his dignity and admit defeat? And in front of tens of thousands of imperial city citizens? Jiang Baiyu could not do it. He glared at Ji Tianqing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. He roared at the top of his lungs, "No! Ji Tianqing! I will never lower my head and admit defeat to you." Ji Tianqing frowned and said expressionlessly, "You won't admit defeat? Then I'll throw you down." As his voice fell, his figure flashed and rushed in front of Jiang Baiyu. He lifted his leg and ruthlessly kicked Jiang Baiyu's chest. Jiang Baiyu was severely injured and was already at the end of his rope. He was completely powerless to block or dodge. Bam! With a muffled sound, Jiang Baiyu was sent flying. He drew an arc in the air and fell off the arena with a plop. He rolled a few rounds before coming to a stop. He struggled to get up and glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. "Ji Tianqing! You! The incomparable humiliation caused the blood in his body to flow in reverse. He was so angry that he trembled. He was just about to speak when he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.